transformation of Crete from scattered Neolithic farming communities to the sophisticated Bronze Age civilization we recognise as Minoan represents one of the most remarkable cultural developments in ancient Mediterranean history. Around 3000 BC, the island witnessed fundamental changes that would lay the groundwork for Europe's first advanced civilization. Archaeological excavations across Crete reveal a society in transition, where traditional village life gradually gave way to increasingly complex social structures, specialised craftsmanship, and extensive trade networks that would eventually span the known world. The early Minoan period, stretching from approximately 3000 to 2100 BC, marked the beginning of this extraordinary transformation. During these centuries, Crete's inhabitants developed the technological innovations, social hierarchies, and economic systems that would define Minoan civilization for the next millennium. The island's strategic position in the eastern Mediterranean, combined with its natural resources and the ingenuity of its people, created conditions perfect for the emergence of a maritime trading empire. Evidence from archaeological sites across Crete demonstrates that the transition from Neolithic to Bronze Age society was neither uniform nor sudden. Different regions of the island developed at varying rates, with some areas maintaining traditional practices while others embraced new technologies and social arrangements. The northern coast, with its natural harbours and proximity to mainland Greece and the Cycladic islands, generally showed earlier signs of cultural advancement than the more isolated southern regions. This geographical variation in development patterns would become a characteristic feature of Minoan civilization throughout its history. The introduction of bronze-working technology around 2700 BC marked a crucial turning point in Cretan society. Unlike their Neolithic predecessors who relied primarily on stone, bone and ceramic tools, early Minoan craftsmen began producing sophisticated bronze implements, weapons, and decorative objects. The mastery of metallurgy required not only technical knowledge, but also access to raw materials, particularly tin, which was scarce in the eastern Mediterranean. This necessity drove the development of long-distance trade relationships that would become fundamental to Minoan prosperity. Bronzeworking in early Minoan Crete demonstrated remarkable sophistication from its earliest phases. Craftsmen produced flat axes, daggers with elaborate hilts, and ceremonial vessels that displayed both functional excellence and artistic merit. The quality of these early bronze objects suggests that metalworking knowledge arrived on Crete not as a gradual development, but as a relatively complete technology, likely introduced through contact with more advanced civilizations in Anatolia or the Levant. Archaeological analysis of bronze artifacts from sites like Moklos and Gurnia reveals alloy compositions that indicate sophisticated understanding of metallurgical principles. Pottery production during the prepalatial period underwent equally dramatic transformation. Early Minoan ceramics evolved from the simple, functional vessels of the Neolithic period to highly sophisticated pottery that combined practical utility with distinctive artistic expression. The development of the potter's wheel around 2500 BC revolutionized ceramic production, allowing for the creation of vessels with unprecedented symmetry and refinement. This technological advancement coincided with the emergence of distinctive Minoan pottery styles that would influence ceramic traditions throughout the Aegean region. The Pyrgos style, named after the site where it was first identified, represents one of the earliest distinctive Minoan ceramic traditions. These vessels, characterized by their burnished red and black surfaces and geometric decorative patterns, demonstrate a level of technical skill and artistic vision that far exceeded contemporary pottery traditions elsewhere in the Aegean. The production of Pyrgos-style ceramics required careful control of firing temperatures and atmospheric conditions, indicating that early Minoan potters possessed sophisticated knowledge of ceramic technology. Vasiliki ware, another important early Minoan pottery style, showcased even more advanced techniques. These vessels featured distinctive mottled red and black surfaces created through controlled oxidation and reduction during firing. The production of vasiliki ware required precise timing and temperature control that could only be achieved by master craftsmen with extensive experience. The wide distribution of vasiliki ware across Crete and its appearance at sites throughout the Aegean demonstrates both the high regard in which these vessels were held and the extensive trade networks that facilitated their distribution. The emergence of specialized craftsmanship extended beyond metallurgy and pottery to include stone carving, jewelry making, and textile production. Early Minoan stone vessels, carved from colourful local stones including serpentine, limestone, and various types of breccia, displayed remarkable technical skill and artistic sophistication. These vessels often featured elaborate handles, spouts, and decorative elements that required considerable expertise to execute. The time and skill required to produce such objects suggests the existence of full-time specialist craftsmen, supported by agricultural surpluses generated by the broader community. Seal carving emerged as another specialized craft during the prepalatial period. Early Minoan seals, typically small stone objects carved with intricate designs, served both practical and symbolic functions. These seals were used to mark ownership of goods and containers, but their elaborate designs and careful craftsmanship suggest they also functioned as status symbols and perhaps religious objects. The iconography of early Minoan seals provides valuable insights into the beliefs, social structures, and daily life of prepalatial Crete. The development of extensive trading networks represented perhaps the most significant achievement of prepalatial Minoan civilization. Archaeological evidence demonstrates that by 2500 BC, Cretan merchants maintained regular contact with communities throughout the Aegean Sea, the eastern Mediterranean, and even regions as distant as the Danube Valley. These trade relationships involved not merely the exchange of finished goods, but also the movement of raw materials, technologies, and ideas that would profoundly influence the development of Minoan civilization. Obsidian from the island of Gyali near Rhodes appeared at early Minoan sites across Crete, indicating regular maritime contact with the Dodecanese islands. Similarly, obsidian from Melos in the Cyclades reached Cretan communities, demonstrating that Minoan traders participated in the broader Aegean obsidian trade network. The presence of these volcanic glasses at inland Cretan sites shows that trade goods were not confined to coastal communities but were distributed throughout the island through internal exchange networks. Evidence for long-distance trade extends far beyond obsidian. Ivory objects found at early Minoan sites originated from elephants in Syria or Egypt, while certain types of stone vessels were carved from materials available only in specific regions of the eastern Mediterranean. Gold jewellery and decorative objects required raw materials that were not available on Crete, necessitating trade relationships with regions where gold was mined. The sophistication of these early trade networks suggests that Minoan merchants possessed detailed knowledge of Mediterranean geography, seasonal wind patterns, and the economic conditions of distant markets. The archaeological record from key prepalatial sites provides crucial evidence for understanding the social and economic changes occurring during this period. Knossos, which would later become the most important Minoan centre, already showed signs of exceptional development during the early Minoan period. Excavations in the area beneath the later palace have revealed substantial stone-built houses, sophisticated drainage systems, and evidence for specialised craft production. The size and complexity of early Minoan Knossos suggest that it functioned as a regional centre that coordinated trade, craft production, and perhaps religious activities for surrounding communities. The settlement at Knossos during the prepalatial period covered an area of approximately 25 hectares, making it one of the largest communities in the Aegean region. Houses were constructed using carefully fitted stone foundations, supporting walls of mud brick, with roofs of wooden beams covered by clay tiles. The larger houses featured multiple rooms arranged around central courtyards, indicating a level of architectural sophistication that reflected the wealth and status of their inhabitants. Storage facilities within these houses contained large ceramic vessels for holding grain, oil and wine, suggesting that individual households controlled significant agricultural surpluses. Phaistos, located in the fertile Messara plain of south-central Crete, emerged as another major centre during the Prepalatial period. The site's commanding position overlooking the plain provided control over some of Crete's most productive agricultural land. Early Minoan remains at Phaistos include substantial stone-built structures, sophisticated pottery, and evidence for metalworking and other specialised crafts. The wealth of the early community at Phaistos is demonstrated by elaborate burial goods found in nearby cemeteries, including gold jewellery, bronze weapons, and imported luxury items. Malea, situated on Crete's northern coast, developed as an important centre for maritime trade during the Prepalatial period. The site's location provided access to natural harbours and placed it along major sea routes, connecting Crete with the Cycladic islands and mainland Greece. Archaeological evidence from early Minoan Malea includes substantial residential structures, workshops for bronze working and pottery production, and storage facilities that suggest the community's involvement in long-distance trade. The presence of imported materials and finished goods at Malea demonstrates its integration into broader Mediterranean exchange networks. Burial practices during the Prepalatial period provide important evidence for emerging social stratification within Minoan communities. Early Minoan cemeteries reveal significant variations in burial goods and tomb construction that reflects differences in wealth and social status. The most elaborate burials contain gold jewellery, bronze weapons, imported pottery, and other luxury items that clearly distinguish their occupants from the broader population. These wealthy burials were often placed in stone-built tombs that required considerable labour and resources to construct. The Moklos Cemetery, located on a small island off Crete's northeastern coast, provides particularly clear evidence for social differentiation during the Prepalatial period. The cemetery contained both simple pit graves with minimal burial goods and elaborate stone-built tombs filled with luxury items. The most spectacular burial, known as Tomb 2, contained gold diadems, silver vessels, bronze daggers with ivory handles, and hundreds of stone vessels carved from exotic materials. The wealth displayed in this single burial far exceeded the resources available to ordinary community members and suggests the existence of a hereditary elite class. Similar patterns of social stratification appear at cemeteries throughout Crete during the Prepalatial period. The Archanes Cemetery in north-central Crete contained burials ranging from simple interments with basic pottery to elaborate tombs with gold jewellery and imported luxury goods. The Platanos Cemetery in the Messara plain included massive circular tombs that served multiple generations of elite families, while ordinary community members were buried in simple graves outside these monumental structures. The emergence of social hierarchy during the Prepalatial period was closely connected to control over trade, craft production, and agricultural surpluses. Wealthy individuals and families appear to have monopolised access to exotic materials and finished goods, while also controlling the specialised knowledge required for advanced crafts like metallurgy and seal carving. This concentration of economic power created the foundation for the more complex social and political structures that would characterise later Minoan civilization. Religious practices during the Prepalatial period, while less well understood than later Minoan religion, show evidence of increasing formalisation and complexity. Peak sanctuaries, religious sites located on prominent mountaintops throughout Crete, began to appear during the early Minoan period. These sites, characterised by accumulations of pottery, bronze figurines, and other votive offerings, suggest organised religious activities that brought together participants from multiple communities. The establishment of peak sanctuaries indicates the development of religious institutions that transcended individual settlements and may have served to integrate dispersed populations under common spiritual practices. The accumulated wealth, technological expertise, and social stratification that characterized late prepalatial Crete created the conditions necessary for one of the ancient world's most remarkable architectural achievements, the construction of monumental palace complexes. Around 2000 BC, Minoan communities began erecting massive multi-story structures that fundamentally transformed the island's political, economic, and religious landscape. These palatial centres represented far more than impressive buildings. They embodied a revolutionary approach to urban planning, administrative organisation, and social coordination that would define Minoan civilization for centuries to come. The first palace at Knossos emerged from careful planning and extraordinary engineering expertise. Construction began with the levelling of the Kafala hill, requiring the removal of thousands of tons of earth and rock to create a stable foundation for the massive structure. The builders then laid out a complex arrangement of rooms, corridors and courtyards around a central rectangular court measuring approximately 50 by 25 metres. This central court, oriented precisely north-south, became the organisational heart of the entire complex and established a template that would be followed at other Minoan palace sites. The architectural innovations displayed at Old Palace period Knossos exceeded anything previously seen in the Aegean world. The structure rose to at least 3 stories in some sections, with sophisticated load-bearing techniques that distributed weight through carefully engineered stone columns and wooden beam systems. The builders employed a distinctive architectural feature that would become synonymous with Minoan construction: columns that tapered from top to bottom, the inverse of later Greek architectural traditions. These columns, carved from single tree trunks and painted bright red, supported massive stone lintels that formed the framework for upper-story construction. Advanced drainage systems represented one of the most impressive technical achievements of Old Palace period architecture. The builders at Knossos installed an elaborate network of terracotta pipes, stone channels, and settling basins that managed both fresh water supply and wastewater removal throughout the complex. The main drainage channel, constructed from carefully fitted stone blocks and covered with removable slabs for maintenance access, could handle substantial water flow during Crete's winter rainy season. Secondary drainage lines connected individual rooms and courtyards to this main system, ensuring that the entire palace remained dry and sanitary. The water management systems extended beyond simple drainage to include sophisticated features for water storage and distribution. Large cisterns carved into the bedrock beneath the palace collected rainwater from roof surfaces and courtyards. Stone-lined channels directed this water through settling tanks, where sediments could precipitate before the clean water flowed into storage areas. The builders installed bronze spigots and valves that allowed controlled water release from storage areas to various parts of the palace complex. These systems demonstrated engineering knowledge that would not be matched elsewhere in Europe for over a millennium. Construction techniques at Knossos revealed the builders' mastery of complex architectural challenges. Foundation walls, built from massive limestone blocks quarried from nearby sources, were laid using precise fitting techniques that required minimal mortar. The builders employed bronze tools, wooden levers, and rope systems to position blocks weighing several tons with remarkable accuracy. Upper-story walls utilised a combination of stone foundations supporting mud brick construction, with wooden frameworks that provided structural flexibility during seismic events. This hybrid construction technique proved remarkably durable, as evidenced by the palace's survival through multiple earthquake cycles. The interior spaces of the old palace at Knossos displayed unprecedented sophistication in both function and decoration. Storage areas in the western section of the complex contained hundreds of large ceramic vessels called pithoi, capable of holding thousands of litres of grain, oil, wine, and other commodities. These storage magazines featured stone-lined pits in their floors where additional pithoi could be partially buried for temperature control and security. The systematic organisation of these storage areas, with carefully maintained inventories tracked through the newly developed Linear A writing system, demonstrated administrative capabilities that rivaled contemporary civilizations in Egypt and Mesopotamia. Workshop areas within the palace complex housed specialised craftsmen producing luxury goods for both local use and export trade. Bronze working areas contained sophisticated furnaces capable of reaching temperatures necessary for complex metallurgical processes. Stone carving workshops produced the elaborate vessels, seals, and architectural elements that characterized Minoan material culture. Pottery workshops utilized advanced kilns that allowed precise temperature control during firing, enabling the production of the thin-walled, highly decorated ceramics that became hallmarks of Minoan craftsmanship. The palace at Phaistos, constructed during the same period as the first Knossos palace, demonstrated that Old Palace period architectural innovations were not confined to a single site. The Phaistos Palace occupied a commanding position overlooking the fertile Messara plain, with its western facade providing dramatic views across southern Crete to the Libyan Sea. The builders at Phaistos faced different topographical challenges than their counterparts at Knossos, requiring extensive terracing and retaining wall construction to create level surfaces for the palace complex. Architectural features at Phaistos revealed both similarities to and differences from contemporary construction at Knossos. The central court at Phaistos measured approximately 55 by 22 metres, slightly larger than the Knossos court but following the same north-south orientation. The western storage magazines at Phaistos contained even larger pithoi than those at Knossos, reflecting the site's role in managing agricultural surpluses from the productive Messara plain. The palace's eastern wing contained elaborate residential quarters with sophisticated drainage systems, painted plaster walls, and evidence for multiple stories. The Malea Palace, though smaller than its counterparts at Knossos and Phaistos, displayed equally impressive architectural innovations adapted to its coastal location. The builders at Malea incorporated features specifically designed to accommodate the site's role in maritime trade, including large storage areas near the palace's northern entrance, where goods arriving by sea could be processed and stored. The palace's proximity to the harbour required special attention to drainage, as the builders had to prevent both rainwater accumulation and seawater infiltration during storms. Construction techniques at all three major Old Palace sites revealed standardized approaches to architectural challenges that suggest coordination between different building projects. The use of ashlar masonry, where stone blocks were cut to precise rectangular shapes and fitted together with minimal gaps, appeared at all three palaces. This technique required specialized stone-cutting tools and considerable expertise, indicating that skilled craftsmen moved between different construction sites or that knowledge was systematically shared among building teams. The development of linear script during the Old Palace period represented a crucial advancement in administrative technology that enabled the complex record-keeping necessary for palace-centered economies. Linear A evolved from earlier Cretan hieroglyphic writing systems, but incorporated significant innovations that made it more suitable for recording the Minoan language. The script consisted of approximately 90 syllabic signs, plus a smaller number of ideographic symbols representing specific commodities, animals, and concepts relevant to administrative record-keeping. Linear tablets from Old Palace period contexts reveal sophisticated accounting systems that tracked agricultural production, craft manufacturing, and trade transactions with remarkable precision. Tablets from Phaistos record deliveries of grain, olives, figs, and livestock from various locations throughout the Messara plain. The records specify not only quantities, but also the individuals or communities responsible for each delivery, suggesting a complex system of obligations and tribute relationships between the palace and surrounding settlements. Administrative documents written in Linear A demonstrate that Minoan bureaucrats maintain detailed inventories of stored commodities, tracking both incoming supplies and outgoing distributions. Storage tablets from Knossos record the contents of individual pithoi, often specifying the quality and origin of stored materials. These records enabled palace administrators to monitor consumption rates, plan for seasonal variations in supply, and coordinate distribution to palace personnel, craftsmen, and religious activities. The geographic distribution of Linear A inscriptions reveals the extent of Old Palace period administrative systems. Linear A tablets have been found not only at the major palace sites, but also at smaller centres throughout Crete, indicating that the script was used for record keeping at multiple levels of Minoan society. The appearance of Linear A inscriptions on Crete's offshore islands and at sites in the Cyclades suggests that Minoan administrative practices spread beyond Crete itself, as Minoan influence expanded throughout the southern Aegean. Maritime trade networks during the Old Palace period achieved unprecedented geographical scope and economic complexity. Minoan merchants established regular trading relationships with Egypt, where Middle Kingdom pharaohs valued Cretan luxury goods, including decorated pottery, bronze weapons, and exotic stone vessels. Egyptian tomb paintings from this period depict Minoan traders, identifiable by their distinctive dress and hairstyles, presenting gifts to Egyptian officials. These artistic representations provide valuable evidence for the appearance and customs of Old Palace period Minoans. Trade relationships with the Levantine coast brought Minoans into contact with the sophisticated urban civilizations of Syria and Palestine. Minoan pottery found at sites like Ugarit and Byblos demonstrates regular commercial contact, while the presence of Levantine cylinder seals at Cretan sites indicates reciprocal trade relationships. These Eastern Mediterranean connections provided Minoans with access to luxury materials including ivory, precious stones, and exotic woods that were incorporated into high-status objects produced in palace workshops. Anatolian trade relationships during the Old Palace period focused particularly on access to metal ores and finished metal products. The scarcity of tin in the Eastern Mediterranean made access to Anatolian tin sources crucial for bronze production. Archaeological evidence suggests that Minoan traders established permanent trading posts along the Anatolian coast, facilitating regular exchange of Cretan manufactured goods for raw materials needed by palace-based craftsmen. The expansion of Minoan trade networks required sophisticated knowledge of Mediterranean navigation, seasonal weather patterns, and the economic conditions of distant markets. Minoan ships of the Old Palace period were larger and more seaworthy than their prepalatial predecessors, capable of carrying substantial cargoes across open water. Ship representations on Minoan seals and frescoes depict vessels with distinctive curved prows and stern posts, multiple banks of oars, and large square sails that enabled efficient long-distance travel. Religious practices during the Old Palace period developed increased complexity and formalization that reflected the growing sophistication of Minoan society. The sacred horns motif, which became one of the most recognizable symbols of Minoan religion, appeared frequently on architectural elements, pottery, seals, and other objects. These horns of consecration, typically carved from stone or formed in clay, were placed on rooftops, altar areas, and other sacred spaces to mark locations where religious activities occurred. Snake goddess figurines, discovered in Old Palace period contexts at Knossos and other sites, provide crucial evidence for Minoan religious beliefs and practices. These ceramic figures, typically depicting women holding serpents in outstretched hands, wore elaborate flounced skirts and fitted bodices that exposed their breasts. The figures' clothing and hairstyles match contemporary fashion as depicted in palace frescoes, suggesting that snake goddesses represented actual priestesses or deities closely associated with human society. Bull symbolism achieved particular prominence during the Old Palace period, appearing in various forms throughout Minoan art and architecture. Bull's head rhytons, ceremonial vessels carved from stone or formed in clay, were used in religious rituals that may have involved the consumption of sacred liquids. The careful craftsmanship of these vessels, with their naturalistic modelling and inlaid eyes of rock, crystal, or other precious materials, demonstrates the importance of bull symbolism in Minoan religious practice. Archaeological evidence suggests that bull-related religious activities included elaborate ceremonies that took place in palace courtyards and other sacred spaces. Fresco fragments from Knossos depict scenes of bull leaping, where acrobatic performers vaulted over charging bulls in displays that combined religious significance with athletic skill. These activities required specially trained participants and carefully controlled conditions, indicating that bull ceremonies were formal religious events rather than spontaneous entertainments. Peak sanctuaries continued to function during the Old Palace period, but showed evidence of increased organisation and more elaborate ritual activities. Votive offerings at sites like Juctus and Petsophas included bronze figurines of worshippers, animals, and double axes that demonstrated the growing wealth and sophistication of religious participants. The standardization of votive offering types across different peak sanctuaries suggests the development of common religious practices that unified Minoan communities throughout Crete. Cave sanctuaries also gained importance during the Old Palace period, with sites like the Chamares Cave on Mount Ida becoming major centres for religious activity. The famous Chamares were pottery, characterised by its thin walls, dark backgrounds and brilliant polychrome decoration, was produced specifically for religious use and deposited in cave sanctuaries as offerings to deities. The technical excellence of Chamares ware, with its sophisticated firing techniques and complex decorative schemes, reflects the resources that Minoan communities devoted to religious activities. The mysterious destructions that swept across Crete around 1700 BC, whether caused by earthquakes, internal conflicts, or external invasions, marked not the end of Minoan civilization, but rather the beginning of its most spectacular phase. The response to these catastrophes demonstrated the remarkable resilience and organisational capabilities of Minoan society. Within decades of the destructions, construction crews were clearing rubble, salvaging usable materials, and laying foundations for palace complexes that would surpass their predecessors in both scale and sophistication. The New Palace period, spanning from approximately 1700 to 1450 BC, witnessed Minoan civilization reach unprecedented heights of artistic achievement, technological innovation, and Mediterranean influence. The reconstruction of Knossos following the Old Palace destructions represented one of the most ambitious architectural projects in Bronze Age Europe. The builders approached this massive undertaking with systematic planning that revealed centuries of accumulated construction experience. Rather than simply rebuilding the damaged sections, they completely reimagined the palace layout, creating a complex that covered nearly 3 hectares and rose to 4 stories in some areas. The new design incorporated lessons learned from the earlier structure's vulnerabilities while introducing architectural innovations that would influence Mediterranean construction techniques for centuries. The western facade of the reconstructed Knossos Palace presented an imposing sight to visitors approaching from the main road. Massive limestone blocks, some weighing over 5 tons, form the foundation walls that supported upper stories constructed from carefully fitted ashlar masonry. The builders employed sophisticated lifting techniques, using bronze tools, wooden levers, and rope systems to position these enormous stones with millimetre precision. The facade's distinctive recessed and projecting sections created dramatic light and shadow effects while providing structural stability against seismic forces. Interior spaces within the new palace at Knossos displayed unprecedented luxury and functional sophistication. The throne room, located on the ground floor of the western wing, featured elaborate gypsum benches flanked by restored frescoes depicting griffins in a landscape of flowering plants. The throne itself, carved from a single block of gypsum and featuring a distinctive high back with undulating curves, represented the pinnacle of Minoan stone carving artistry. Adjacent to the throne room, a lustral basin with steps leading down below floor level served religious or ceremonial functions that remain enigmatic but clearly held great importance in palace activities. The grand staircase at Knossos exemplified the architectural mastery achieved during the New Palace period. This remarkable structure descended 4 flights through the eastern wing of the palace, with each landing opening onto different residential and administrative areas. The staircase featured massive stone steps supported by distinctive Minoan columns that tapered from top to bottom, painted bright red and topped with black cushion capitals. Natural light filtered down through a central light well, illuminating the staircase and adjacent rooms while providing ventilation for the lower levels. Storage facilities in the reconstructed palace demonstrated the enormous scale of New Palace period economic activities. The Western magazines contained over 400 pithoi, with a combined capacity exceeding 75,000 litres, sufficient to store grain for several thousand people throughout an entire year. These massive ceramic vessels, some standing nearly 2 metres tall, were manufactured using specialised techniques that ensured structural integrity, despite their enormous size. Stone-lined cists built into the magazine floors provided additional storage for valuable commodities like saffron, precious metals, and imported luxury goods. Advanced drainage systems in the new palace at Knossos surpassed even the impressive engineering of the earlier structure. The main drainage channel, constructed from precisely fitted stone blocks and measuring over 1 metre in height, could handle flash floods that occasionally swept down from the surrounding hills. Secondary drainage lines connected every major room and courtyard to this central system through a network of terracotta pipes joined with waterproof cement. Inspection chambers at regular intervals allowed maintenance crews to clear blockages and repair damaged sections without disrupting the entire system. The Queen's Megaron, located in the residential quarter of the palace, showcased the sophisticated lifestyle enjoyed by Minoan elite during the New Palace period. This suite of interconnected rooms featured elaborate bathroom facilities with terracotta bathtubs, running water systems, and private toilet facilities that drained into the palace's main sewage system. The walls displayed some of the finest Minoan frescoes, including the famous dolphin fresco that transformed the room into an underwater paradise with playful dolphins swimming among colourful fish and sea plants. Reconstruction at Phaistos followed similar principles but adapted to the site's unique topographical challenges and regional characteristics. The new palace complex covered an even larger area than its predecessor, with extensive terracing that created level surfaces across the sloping hillside. The builders at Phaistos demonstrated particular expertise in retaining wall construction, creating massive stone barriers that held back thousands of tons of fill material while providing stable foundations for palace structures. The Western Court at Phaistos became one of the most impressive public spaces in the Minoan world during the New Palace period. This vast paved area, measuring approximately 50 by 40 metres, could accommodate large gatherings for religious ceremonies, athletic competitions, or administrative functions. The court's carefully laid stone pavement incorporated drainage channels that prevented water accumulation during winter rains while maintaining a level surface suitable for various activities. Raised walkways around the court's perimeter provided viewing areas for spectators during public events. Storage facilities at New Palace period Phaistos reflected the site's role as the administrative centre for Crete's most productive agricultural region. The palace's magazines contained pithoi even larger than those at Knossos, with some vessels capable of holding over 1,000 litres of grain or oil. Linear tablets found in these storage areas record deliveries from dozens of settlements throughout the Masara plain. indicating that the palace coordinated agricultural production across a territory encompassing hundreds of square kilometres. The Malia Palace reconstruction incorporated innovative features that reflected the site's specialised role in maritime trade and craft production. The builders created extensive workshop areas near the palace's northern entrance, where goods arriving by sea could be processed before distribution throughout Crete's interior. These workshops contained sophisticated furnaces for bronze working, pottery kilns capable of precise temperature control, and stone carving areas equipped with specialised tools for working imported materials. A unique feature of the reconstructed Malia Palace was the Knossos stone, a circular stone platform with 34 cup-shaped depressions around its perimeter and a larger central depression. This mysterious object, carved from a single block of limestone and measuring nearly 1 metre in diameter, may have served ritual functions related to agricultural ceremonies or seasonal celebrations. The careful craftsmanship required to create the Knossos stone demonstrates the importance of whatever activities took place around it. The artistic achievements of the New Palace period represented the culmination of centuries of Minoan creative development. Fresco painting reached unprecedented levels of sophistication, with palace walls transformed into vibrant displays of Minoan life, religious beliefs, and natural observations. The technical mastery displayed in these paintings required specialised knowledge of pigment preparation, plaster application, and painting techniques that enabled artists to create works of remarkable durability and visual impact. The bull-leaping fresco from Knossos exemplified the dynamic energy and technical excellence of New Palace period art. This masterpiece depicted 3 figures engaged in the dangerous sport of bull-leaping, with one athlete grasping the bull's horns, another vaulting over its back, and a third preparing to catch the vaulter. The artist captured the muscular tension of the charging bull, the graceful athleticism of the human participants, and the split-second timing required for successful completion of this spectacular feat. The fresco's composition demonstrated sophisticated understanding of movement, proportion, and dramatic impact. Marine life provided inspiration for some of the most beautiful Minoan frescoes of the New Palace period. The dolphin fresco from the Queen's Megaron at Knossos transformed architectural space into an underwater environment where dolphins played among colourful fish, sea urchins, and aquatic plants. The artist's careful observation of marine life resulted in anatomically accurate depictions that revealed intimate familiarity with Mediterranean sea creatures. The use of multiple shades of blue and green created depth and movement that made the painted sea appear to ripple across the palace walls. The procession fresco, discovered in the corridor of the procession at Knossos, depicted dozens of figures carrying various offerings towards an unseen destination. These life-sized figures wore elaborate clothing that provided detailed information about Minoan fashion, social hierarchy, and ceremonial practices. Men wore simple loincloths and carried vessels, weapons, or other objects, while women displayed more elaborate dress, including flounced skirts, fitted bodices, and complex hairstyles adorned with ribbons and jewellery. The variety of skin tones, facial features, and clothing styles suggested that participants in Minoan processions included people from various ethnic backgrounds and social levels. Landscape elements in New Palace period frescoes demonstrated Minoan artists' sophisticated understanding of natural environments. The Saffron Gatherer fresco depicted a monkey collecting saffron crocuses in a rocky landscape filled with accurately rendered plants and geological features. The artist's attention to botanical detail revealed careful observation of plant growth patterns, seasonal variations, and the relationship between different species in natural ecosystems. Such naturalistic accuracy required extensive field study and suggested that Minoan artists spent considerable time observing the natural world. Religious themes permeated much New Palace period art, but often in subtle ways that integrated sacred symbolism with secular activities. The snake goddess figurines from Knossos represented female deities or priestesses holding serpents while wearing elaborate court dress. These ceramic sculptures combined religious iconography with fashion elements that match contemporary frescoes, suggesting close connections between religious practices and daily palace life. The figures' exposed breasts, tiny waists, and flounced skirts established artistic conventions that influenced Mediterranean art for centuries. Sacred horns appeared throughout New Palace period architecture and decorative arts as symbols of divine presence and religious authority. These distinctive curved elements, carved from stone or moulded in clay, crowned palace rooftops, marked altar areas, and decorated ceremonial vessels. The standardization of horn shapes and proportions across different sites indicated shared religious concepts that unified Minoan communities throughout Crete and beyond. The placement of sacred horns at prominent locations within palace complexes demonstrated the integration of religious symbolism with political authority. Minoan influence during the New Palace period extended far beyond Crete to encompass much of the Aegean Sea and parts of the eastern Mediterranean. Archaeological evidence from the Cycladic Islands reveals extensive Minoan settlement and cultural influence that transformed local societies. On Thera, Minoan colonists established Akrotiri, a prosperous town that adopted Minoan architectural styles, artistic conventions, and administrative practices while maintaining connections with the Cretan homeland. The settlement at Akrotiri displayed sophisticated urban planning that reflected Minoan expertise in creating functional and beautiful living environments. Multi-storey houses built from local stone incorporated Minoan architectural features including light wells, drainage systems, and distinctive column styles. The town's streets were paved with stone slabs and equipped with covered drains that managed both rainwater and household waste. Public buildings included storage facilities, workshops, and religious areas that served the needs of a prosperous trading community. Frescoes from Akrotiri demonstrated the spread of Minoan artistic traditions beyond Crete, while revealing local adaptations and innovations. The fisherman fresco depicted a nude male figure carrying strings of fish, combining Minoan artistic techniques with subject matter specific to the island's maritime economy. The spring fresco transformed an entire room into a landscape of flowering lilies and swallows, creating an immersive natural environment that rivaled the finest palace decorations on Crete. These paintings required skilled artists who had mastered Minoan techniques but adapted them to local preferences and conditions. Minoan pottery found throughout the Cycladic Islands during the New Palace period indicates regular trade relationships and cultural exchange. Local potters adopted Minoan decorative motifs, vessel shapes, and manufacturing techniques, while developing regional variations that reflected local tastes and available materials. The distribution of Minoan-style pottery across the Cyclades suggests a network of interconnected communities that shared cultural practices while maintaining distinct local identities. Evidence for Minoan influence on mainland Greece during the New Palace period appears at numerous sites where Minoan pottery, artistic motifs, and architectural features have been discovered. At Pylos, Minoan-style frescoes decorated the walls of what would later become a major Mycenaean palace. These paintings included marine themes, religious symbols, and decorative patterns that closely paralleled contemporary Cretan art. The presence of such sophisticated decorations at mainland sites suggests either Minoan artists working abroad or local artists trained in Minoan techniques. Trade relationships with Egypt reached new levels of complexity and mutual benefit during the New Palace period. Egyptian tomb paintings from the reigns of Thutmose III and Amenhotep II depicted Minoan ambassadors presenting elaborate gifts to the pharaoh, including decorated pottery, bronze weapons, and exotic animals. These diplomatic exchanges facilitated regular commercial contact that brought Egyptian gold, ivory, and precious stones to Crete in exchange for Minoan manufactured goods and raw materials. Minoan merchants established permanent trading posts along the Levantine coast, where they could coordinate commercial activities with local partners. At Ugarit, a major Syrian port city, Minoan pottery appeared in such quantities that it suggests resident Minoan traders rather than occasional visits. These trading posts served as intermediaries between Cretan producers and Eastern Mediterranean markets, facilitating the exchange of goods, technologies and ideas across cultural boundaries. The prosperity generated by extensive trade networks enabled new palace period communities to support unprecedented numbers of specialized craftsmen, artists and administrators. Palace workshops produced luxury goods that combined technical excellence with artistic innovation, creating objects that were valued throughout the Mediterranean world. Bronze workers developed new alloys and manufacturing techniques that improved both the functional and aesthetic qualities of their products. Stone carvers created vessels, seals, and architectural elements that displayed remarkable skill in working difficult materials. Urban planning during the New Palace period reflected sophisticated understanding of community needs and environmental challenges. Towns like Gurnia displayed carefully planned layouts with paved streets, public squares and residential areas organised according to social and economic functions. Houses varied in size and complexity according to their inhabitants' wealth and status, but all incorporated basic amenities like drainage systems, storage areas and workshop spaces. The integration of residential, commercial and religious areas created communities that functioned efficiently while maintaining social cohesion. Water management systems in New Palace period settlements demonstrated engineering capabilities that would not be matched in Europe for over a millennium. At Knossos, aqueducts brought fresh water from springs several kilometres away, while sophisticated distribution systems delivered water to every major building in the palace complex. Settling tanks removed sediments and impurities, while covered channels prevented contamination during transport. The reliability of these water systems enabled dense urban populations that would have been impossible without assured water supplies. The elaborate water management systems and sophisticated urban planning of New Palace period settlements provided the infrastructure for religious practices that permeated every aspect of Minoan life. Archaeological evidence from palace complexes, peak sanctuaries, and sacred caves reveals a complex religious system that integrated natural forces, agricultural cycles, and social hierarchies into a unified worldview. Unlike the centralized temple complexes of contemporary civilizations in Egypt and Mesopotamia, Minoan religious practices occurred in diverse settings that reflected the civilization's unique relationship with both natural and constructed environments. The bull occupied a central position in Minoan religious iconography, appearing in contexts ranging from monumental architectural sculptures to delicate seal carvings. Bull's head rhytons discovered in palace storage areas and religious contexts demonstrate the sophisticated craftsmanship devoted to these sacred vessels. The rhyton from Knossos, carved from black steatite with eyes of rock crystal and horns of gilded wood, required exceptional skill in working multiple materials to achieve its lifelike appearance. The vessel's nostrils were pierced to allow liquid to flow through the sculpture during ceremonial use, transforming the act of pouring into a ritual performance that connected participants with the bull's symbolic power. Archaeological evidence suggests that live bulls played active roles in religious ceremonies conducted in palace courtyards and other sacred spaces. The central court at Knossos, with its precise north-south orientation and carefully paved surface, provided an ideal venue for bull-related rituals that combined religious significance with athletic spectacle. Fresco fragments from its various palace contexts depict scenes of bull leaping, where acrobatic performers demonstrated extraordinary courage and skill by vaulting over charging bulls. These activities required specially trained athletes who spent years developing the precise timing and physical coordination necessary to survive encounters with animals weighing over 500 kilograms. The bull leaping ceremonies involved 3 distinct phases of interaction between human performers and the sacred animal. Initial contact required the athlete to grasp the bull's horns while running alongside the charging animal, using the bull's forward momentum to propel themselves upward and forward. The second phase involved the dangerous vault over the bull's back, where performers had to maintain perfect balance while travelling through the air above an unpredictable and potentially violent animal. The final phase required precise timing to land safely beyond the bull's reach, often with assistance from teammates positioned to catch or steady the vaulting athlete. The religious significance of bull leaping extended beyond mere athletic display to encompass fundamental Minoan beliefs about the relationship between human skill and natural forces. The bull represented untamed natural power that could be channeled but never fully controlled by human intelligence and training. Successful completion of bull leaping demonstrated the performer's spiritual worthiness and physical courage, qualities that were highly valued in a Minoan society. The ceremonies likely occurred during specific seasonal festivals when agricultural communities sought divine favour for successful harvests or protection from natural disasters. Sacred double axes, known by the Greek term labyrinth, appeared throughout Minoan religious contexts as symbols of divine authority and ritual power. These ceremonial weapons, often too large and ornate for practical use, were crafted from bronze with elaborate decorative elements, including spiral patterns, religious symbols, and precious metal inlays. The largest examples, discovered in cave sanctuaries and peak sanctuaries, measured over 1 meter in length and weighed more than 10 kilograms, requiring 2 hands to lift and manipulate during ceremonial use. The symbolic significance of the double axe derived from its association with both creation and destruction, fundamental forces that governed natural cycles and human life. The axe's ability to fell trees connected it with agricultural activities and construction projects, while its use as a weapon linked it with protection and warfare. In religious contexts, the double axe may have represented divine power to both nurture and punish, reflecting Minoan understanding of natural forces that could bring either abundance or catastrophe, depending on human behaviour and divine favour. Miniature double axes crafted from gold, silver and bronze served as votive offerings deposited at religious sites throughout Crete. These precious objects, often measuring only a few centimetres in length, demonstrated the widespread devotion to axe symbolism across different social levels. The careful craftsmanship required to create such small objects with precise proportions and decorative details indicates that specialized artisans devoted considerable time and skill to producing religious items for ordinary worshippers as well as elite patrons. Tree worship represented another fundamental aspect of Minoan religious practice, with sacred groves and individual trees serving as focal points for community rituals. Seal impressions and fresco fragments depict elaborate ceremonies conducted beneath large trees, where participants offered libations, danced, and performed other ritual activities. The trees in these religious scenes often display supernatural characteristics, including anthropomorphic features like human-like branches or faces emerging from bark, suggesting that Minoans perceived trees as dwelling places for divine spirits or deities. Sacred tree ceremonies typically involve groups of female participants wearing elaborate flounced skirts and fitted bodices that expose their breasts. These women, identified as priestesses or religious devotees, performed ritualized dances around sacred trees while carrying various ceremonial objects, including double axes, sacred horns, and vessels for libation offerings. The standardized nature of their clothing and activities across different artistic representations suggests that tree worship followed established protocols that were maintained consistently throughout Minoan territory. The religious significance of trees extended beyond their role as ritual focal points to encompass broader concepts of fertility, regeneration, and the connection between earth and sky. Trees served as natural symbols of seasonal cycles, dying back in winter and returning to life in spring, paralleling agricultural patterns that governed Minoan economic life. The ability of trees to grow from small seeds into massive organisms that could live for centuries made them powerful metaphors for divine creative force and the continuity of life across generations. Peak sanctuaries scattered across Crete's mountainous landscape provided settings for religious activities that brought together participants from multiple communities. These sites, typically located on prominent hilltops with commanding views of surrounding territory, contained accumulations of votive offerings that reveal the diversity of Minoan religious practices. Excavations at Euctus, the peak sanctuary closest to Knossos, have uncovered thousands of clay figurines depicting worshippers, animals, and body parts offered for healing or protection. The votive figurines from peak sanctuaries display remarkable variety in both subject matter and artistic quality, reflecting the diverse backgrounds of their dedicators. Human figures range from elaborate sculptures depicting wealthy individuals in court dress to simple clay forms that ordinary farmers could afford to commission or create themselves. Animal figurines include cattle, sheep, goats, and pigs, suggesting that peak sanctuary rituals involve prayers for livestock health and agricultural prosperity. The presence of figurines depicting body parts such as arms, legs, and internal organs indicates that peak sanctuaries served healing functions where people sought divine intervention for medical problems. Bronze objects from peak sanctuaries demonstrate the wealth that some communities devoted to religious activities. Double axes, daggers, and human figurines cast in bronze required significant metal resources and specialized craftsmanship, indicating that peak sanctuary worship attracted support from Minoan elite, as well as ordinary community members. The standardization of bronze votive types across different peak sanctuaries suggests shared religious concepts that unified diverse communities under common spiritual practices. Seasonal festivals at peak sanctuaries coincided with important agricultural events, including planting, harvesting, and livestock breeding cycles. Spring ceremonies may have involved prayers for successful crop germination and protection from late frosts that could destroy young plants. Summer festivals could have celebrated the grain harvest and sought divine favour for fruit ripening and olive production. Autumn ceremonies might have focused on winemaking, olive pressing, and preparation for winter months, when communities depended on stored food supplies. Cave sanctuaries provided alternative religious settings that emphasized connection with underground forces and chthonic deities. The Chimera's Cave on Mount Ida, located at an elevation of over 1,500 metres, served as a major pilgrimage destination where worshippers deposited elaborate pottery offerings. The famous Chimeras wear ceramics, characterized by their thin walls, dark backgrounds, and brilliant polychrome decoration, were produced specifically for religious use and represent some of the finest pottery ever created in the ancient world. The technical excellence of Chimera's ware required master potters with extraordinary skill in clay preparation, wheel throwing, and kiln firing. The vessel's extremely thin walls, often less than 3 millimeters thick, demanded perfect clay consistency and precise wheel control to prevent collapse during formation. The complex decorative schemes, featuring spirals, rosettes, and naturalistic motifs in white, red, and yellow pigments, required multiple firings with careful temperature control to achieve the brilliant colours that characterise these masterpieces. Religious activities in cave sanctuaries may have involved rituals related to death, rebirth, and communication with ancestral spirits. The underground setting provided natural symbolism for journeys to the underworld and return to the land of the living. The acoustic properties of caves, where sounds echo and reverberate in mysterious ways, could have enhanced the psychological impact of religious ceremonies through music, chanting, or other vocal performances. The role of women in Minoan religious practices appears to have been far more prominent than in contemporary civilizations, with female figures dominating artistic representations of religious activities. The famous snake goddess figurines from Knossos depict women holding serpents while wearing elaborate court dress that matches contemporary fashion as shown in palace frescoes. These ceramic sculptures, standing approximately 35 centimeters tall, combine religious iconography with realistic portrayal of Minoan clothing, hairstyles and jewellery. The snake goddess figurines' exposed breasts, tiny waists accentuated by tight-fitting bodices, and elaborate flounced skirts established artistic conventions that influenced Mediterranean art for centuries. The figures' complex hairstyles, featuring long curls arranged in elaborate patterns and decorated with ribbons or bands, required considerable time and skill to create and maintain. Such sophisticated personal grooming suggests that the women depicted held high social status and had access to specialised servants or beauticians. The religious significance of serpent symbolism in Minoan culture connected with concepts of earth fertility, healing powers, and protective magic. Snakes' ability to shed their skins and emerge renewed made them powerful symbols of regeneration and rebirth. Their association with underground spaces linked them with chthonic deities and the mysterious forces that governed plant growth and mineral formation. The snake goddess figures' confident handling of potentially dangerous serpents demonstrated their spiritual power and divine protection. Female dominance in Minoan religious iconography extended beyond snake goddess imagery to include numerous other contexts where women appear as primary religious figures. Fresco fragments from various palace sites depict women conducting libation ceremonies, leading religious processions, and presiding over ritual activities. These artistic representations suggest that Minoan society accorded women significant religious authority and may have recognized female deities as primary divine powers. Priestesses in Minoan society appear to have held positions of considerable social and political influence that extended beyond purely religious functions. The elaborate clothing, jewellery, and ceremonial objects associated with female religious figures in Minoan art indicate that priestesses controlled significant economic resources and social networks. The integration of religious and administrative activities within palace complexes suggests that priestesses may have played important roles in economic management, diplomatic relations, and community governance. Libation rituals represented fundamental aspects of Minoan religious practice, with elaborate ceremonies involving the pouring of liquids as offerings to deities or ancestral spirits. Archaeological evidence from palace sites includes numerous vessels specifically designed for libation use, including rhytons, chalices, and specialized pouring vessels with distinctive shapes and decorative elements. These ceremonial containers were often crafted from precious materials, including gold, silver, and exotic stones that demonstrated the importance of libation activities in Minoan religious life. The liquids used in libation ceremonies likely included wine, olive oil, honey, and perhaps milk or blood from sacrificial animals. Wine, produced from grapes grown in vineyards throughout Crete, held particular religious significance due to its ability to alter consciousness and create euphoric states associated with divine communication. The fermentation process that transformed grape juice into wine provided a natural metaphor for spiritual transformation and divine intervention in natural processes. Olive oil served multiple functions in Minoan religious practices, including fuel for sacred lamps, anointing substance for ritual purification, and offering liquid poured on altars or sacred objects. The olive tree's longevity and ability to produce fruit for centuries made olive oil a symbol of continuity and divine blessing. The careful cultivation required for olive production connected olive oil with agricultural prosperity and community cooperation in maintaining productive groves. Honey occupied a special position in Minoan religious practices due to its association with bees, insects that were regarded as messengers between the human and divine worlds. The complex social organization of bee colonies provided natural models for human community structure, while the bee's ability to transform flower nectar into honey paralleled divine transformation of natural materials into sacred substances. Honey's preservative properties made it valuable for religious offerings that needed to remain pure over extended periods. Seasonal festivals throughout the Minoan calendar coordinated religious activities with agricultural cycles and natural phenomena that governed community life. Spring celebrations likely focused on fertility rituals designed to ensure successful crop germination and animal reproduction. These festivals may have involved elaborate processions where community members carried agricultural tools, seeds, and young animals to sacred sites for divine blessing. Summer festivals celebrated the grain harvest and sought divine protection for fruit ripening and olive production. Archaeological evidence suggests that these celebrations involved communal feasting, where communities shared the fruits of their agricultural labour while offering portions to deities through burning, burial, or deposition in sacred locations. The social bonding that occurred during harvest festivals helped maintain community cohesion during the intensive labour required for crop processing and storage. Autumn ceremonies mark the completion of the agricultural year and preparation for winter months, when communities depended on stored food supplies. Winemaking activities that began with the grape harvest provided natural focal points for religious celebrations that combined practical work with spiritual observance. The transformation of grapes into wine through fermentation offered powerful metaphors for divine intervention in natural processes and the potential for spiritual transformation through religious participation. Winter solstice observances may have involved rituals designed to encourage the sun's return and the renewal of agricultural cycles. The careful astronomical orientation of many Minoan religious sites suggests that seasonal festivals were timed according to precise solar observations that required specialized knowledge maintained by religious specialists. The integration of astronomical knowledge with religious practice demonstrated the sophisticated understanding of natural cycles that characterized Minoan civilization at its peak. The religious ceremonies and seasonal festivals that bound Minoan communities together created social networks that extended far beyond Crete's shores, facilitating commercial relationships that would transform the ancient Mediterranean into an interconnected economic system. Archaeological evidence from sites across the Mediterranean reveals the extraordinary scope of Minoan trade networks, which by 1600 BC stretched from the tin sources of Western Europe to the ivory markets of Nubia, from the amber routes of the Baltic to the spice ports of the Levant. These commercial connections represented more than simple exchanges of goods. They constituted a sophisticated system of diplomatic relationships, technological transfer, and cultural exchange that positioned Minoan merchants as the dominant maritime traders of their era. The development of Minoan commercial supremacy required innovations in shipbuilding technology that enabled reliable long-distance navigation across open Mediterranean waters. Archaeological evidence from ship representations on seals, frescoes, and pottery reveals vessels that incorporated advanced design features specifically adapted for cargo transport and extended voyages. The distinctive Minoan ship design featured a pronounced ram-like prow that could cut through heavy seas, while the curved stern provided stability in following waves. These vessels measured approximately 20 to 30 meters in length and could carry cargo loads exceeding 20 tons, making them among the largest merchant ships operating in the Bronze Age Mediterranean. Minoan shipwrights developed sophisticated construction techniques that combined structural strength with operational flexibility. The hulls were built using a shell-first construction method, where planks were edge-joined with mortise and tenon joints, creating watertight seams that could flex with wave action without breaking apart. Internal frames added structural support while creating cargo compartments that could be configured for different types of merchandise. The ships featured both square sails for running with favourable winds and banks of oars for manoeuvring in harbours or during calm conditions. Navigation technology employed by Minoan mariners incorporated detailed knowledge of seasonal wind patterns, current flows, and celestial navigation techniques that enabled accurate course plotting across hundreds of kilometres of open water. Archaeological evidence suggests that Minoan navigators used lead-weighted lines to measure water depth and identify underwater obstacles, while also employing primitive compasses based on magnetized iron needles floating in oil-filled bowls. Coastal pilot guides, possibly recorded on perishable materials that have not survived, would have contained crucial information about harbour approaches, seasonal weather patterns, and local trading conditions. The establishment of permanent trading posts throughout the Mediterranean required diplomatic negotiations with local rulers and the development of standardized commercial practices that could function across different cultural and linguistic boundaries. Minoan merchants established major trading centres at strategic locations, including Miletos on the Anatolian coast, where excavations have revealed substantial Minoan residential quarters and warehouse facilities. These overseas settlements served as intermediaries between Cretan producers and local markets, while also providing secure bases for further commercial expansion into interior regions. At Miletos, Minoan traders constructed substantial stone buildings that followed Cretan architectural traditions while adapting to local conditions and materials. The residential quarters featured multi-storey houses with central courtyards, sophisticated drainage systems, and storage areas designed for managing large quantities of trade goods. Warehouse facilities included specialised storage areas for different types of merchandise, with separate sections for pottery, textiles, metals, and perishable goods that required protection from moisture and temperature fluctuations. The commercial relationship between Minoan traders and Egyptian markets achieved unprecedented complexity during the New Palace period, with regular exchanges that brought Egyptian gold, ivory, and exotic stones to Crete in return for Minoan manufactured goods and raw materials. Egyptian tomb paintings from the reigns of Thutmose III and Amenhotep II provide detailed visual evidence of these commercial relationships, depicting Minoan ambassadors presenting elaborate gifts to pharaonic officials. These diplomatic exchanges facilitated regular trading contacts that operated through established protocols governing commercial transactions, dispute resolution, and diplomatic immunity for foreign merchants. Egyptian records describe Minoan traders as keftiu, a term that appears to derive from the Egyptian name for Crete itself. These documents detail the specific goods that Minoan merchants brought to Egyptian markets, including decorated pottery that was highly prized by Egyptian elite, bronze weapons and tools that demonstrated superior metallurgical techniques, and exotic stone vessels carved from materials available only in the Aegean region. The consistent appearance of keftiu traders in Egyptian art and texts over several centuries indicates that commercial relationships between Crete and Egypt operated through formal agreements that provided legal protection and commercial privileges for foreign merchants. Minoan pottery found in Egyptian contexts reveals the sophisticated understanding of foreign market preferences that characterize successful Minoan commercial operations. Vessels discovered in Egyptian tombs and settlements show adaptations in shape, size, and decorative motifs that catered specifically to Egyptian tastes while maintaining distinctive Minoan craftsmanship standards. Large storage jars found at Egyptian sites were designed to hold commodities that were particularly valued in Egyptian markets, including olive oil, wine, and honey that could not be produced locally in the Nile Valley. Trade relationships with the Levantine coast brought Minoan merchants into contact with the sophisticated urban civilizations of Syria and Palestine, where they established commercial networks that extended into Mesopotamian markets. At Ugarit, one of the major ports of the ancient world, Minoan pottery appears in such quantities that it indicates permanent Minoan trading communities, rather than occasional commercial visits. These resident merchants served as intermediaries between Cretan producers and the complex commercial networks that connected the Labyrinthine coast with inland trading centres throughout Syria and Mesopotamia. The commercial importance of Ugarit for Minoan trade derived from its position as a hub for multiple trade routes that connected the Mediterranean with overland caravan routes reaching into Central Asia. Minoan merchants at Ugarit gained access to luxury goods including lapis lazuli from Afghanistan, carnelian from India, and precious metals from Anatolia that were highly valued in Cretan markets. The diversity of foreign goods found at Minoan sites demonstrates the sophisticated commercial intelligence that enabled Minoan traders to identify profitable opportunities in distant markets and organise complex trading expeditions that could span multiple years and thousands of kilometres. Cuneiform tablets from Ugarit record commercial transactions involving Minoan merchants, providing crucial evidence for the legal and administrative frameworks that governed international trade during the Bronze Age. These documents reveal that Minoan traders operated under formal contracts that specified delivery schedules, quality standards, and dispute resolution procedures. The tablets also indicate that Minoan merchants maintained permanent representatives at major trading centres who could negotiate contracts, arrange financing, and coordinate shipments on behalf of Cretan principals. Anatolian trade relationships focus particularly on access to metal ores and finished metal products that were essential for Minoan craft production. The scarcity of tin in the eastern Mediterranean made Anatolian sources crucial for bronze production, while Anatolian silver mines provided raw materials for the luxury goods that were fundamental to Minoan export trade. Archaeological evidence from sites along the Anatolian coast reveals Minoan trading posts that served as collection points for metal ores and distribution centres for Minoan manufactured goods. The complexity of Anatolian trade relationships required sophisticated knowledge of local political conditions, seasonal transportation routes, and the technical requirements for metal ore processing and transport. Tin ores from central Anatolian sources had to be processed into standardized ingots suitable for long-distance transport, while maintaining quality standards that would meet the requirements of Minoan bronze workers. The logistical challenges involved in organising these supply chains required permanent commercial organisations with specialised knowledge and substantial financial resources. Evidence for Minoan commercial reach extends even to the western Mediterranean, where distinctive Minoan pottery and other artefacts have been discovered at sites in southern Italy, Sicily, and possibly southern Spain. These finds suggest that Minoan merchants may have established trading relationships with communities that controlled access to tin sources in Western Europe, a commodity that was essential for bronze production but extremely scarce in the eastern Mediterranean. The distances involved in such trading expeditions would have required exceptional navigational skills and substantial investment in ships, crews, and trading capital. Sardinian sites have yielded Minoan pottery and bronze objects that indicate regular commercial contact during the New Palace period. The island's strategic position in the western Mediterranean made it an ideal base for trading expeditions to the western tin sources, while its own copper deposits provided raw materials that were valuable in eastern Mediterranean markets. The establishment of Minoan trading relationships with Sardinian communities required diplomatic negotiations and the development of commercial protocols that could function across significant cultural and linguistic differences. The administrative systems that supported Minoan commercial operations achieved remarkable sophistication in record-keeping, quality control, and financial management. Linear A tablets from palace sites record detailed inventories of trade goods, tracking quantities, origins, destinations, and the individuals responsible for each transaction. These records enabled palace administrators to monitor the performance of trading expeditions, calculate profits and losses, and plan future commercial activities based on market intelligence gathered from previous transactions. Standardized weights and measures throughout Minoan territory facilitated commercial transactions by ensuring that buyers and sellers could rely on consistent measurement standards regardless of location. Archaeological evidence reveals bronze weight sets that follow standardized units based on multiples of approximately 61 grams, a system that appears to have been adopted throughout the Aegean region and parts of the eastern Mediterranean. These weight standards enabled Minoan merchants to conduct transactions with confidence that measurements would be accurate and consistent across different markets. The development of sophisticated sealing systems provided security and authentication for commercial transactions involving valuable goods and long-distance transport. Minoan seals, carved from hard stones and featuring intricate designs, served as personal signatures that could not be easily forged or duplicated. Seal impressions on clay tags attached to containers provided tamper-evident security that enabled merchants to detect unauthorized access to their goods during transport and storage. Harbour facilities throughout Crete underwent major improvements during the New Palace period to accommodate the increased volume and complexity of maritime trade. The harbour at Knossos, located at the mouth of the Keratos River, featured stone-built quays, warehouse facilities and administrative buildings, where customs officials could inspect incoming cargoes and collect taxes on imported goods. Dredging operations maintained adequate water depth for large merchant vessels, while breakwaters provided protection from storms that could damage ships and cargoes. The construction of advanced port facilities required substantial investment in engineering expertise and construction materials that reflected the economic importance of maritime trade to Minoan prosperity. At Komos, near Phaistos, archaeologists have uncovered massive stone-built structures that served as ship sheds where vessels could be hauled ashore for maintenance and repairs. These facilities included specialized workshops for shipbuilding and repair, with evidence for bronze working, wood processing and rope manufacturing that supported the maintenance of large merchant fleets. Storage facilities at major Minoan ports incorporated sophisticated features for managing different types of trade goods under varying environmental conditions. Warehouse buildings featured raised floors that protected stored goods from moisture damage, while thick walls provided insulation against temperature fluctuations that could damage sensitive commodities like textiles and organic materials. Separate storage areas for different types of goods prevented contamination and enabled efficient inventory management through systematic organization of warehouse space. The economic impact of extensive trade networks transformed Minoan society by creating wealth that supported unprecedented numbers of specialized craftsmen, artists, and administrators. Palace workshops produced luxury goods that combined technical excellence with artistic innovation, creating products that were highly valued throughout the Mediterranean world. The concentration of skilled craftsmen in palace centres enabled the development of advanced manufacturing techniques that gave Minoan products competitive advantages in foreign markets. Bronze working achieved exceptional sophistication through access to high-quality raw materials and the development of advanced metallurgical techniques. Minoan bronze workers created alloys with precisely controlled tin content that optimized the mechanical properties of finished products for specific applications. Weapons featured high tin content for hardness and edge retention, while decorative objects used lower tin content for workability and corrosion resistance. The technical knowledge required for such precise alloy control represented centuries of accumulated experience and systematic experimentation. Stone carving workshops produced vessels, seals, and decorative objects that demonstrated remarkable skill in working difficult materials imported from throughout the Mediterranean. Craftsmen working with Egyptian porphyry, Spartan basalt, and other exotic stones required specialized tools and techniques that enabled them to create objects of exceptional beauty and technical perfection. The time and skill required to produce such objects made them valuable trade goods that commanded high prices in foreign markets while also serving as diplomatic gifts that facilitated commercial relationships. Textile production represented another major component of Minoan export trade, with workshops producing fine fabrics that were highly prized throughout the ancient world. Archaeological evidence from Linear A tablets indicates that palace administrators maintained detailed records of textile production, tracking the quantities of raw materials, the numbers of workers involved, and the quality standards required for different types of fabric. The complexity of these production systems required sophisticated management techniques that coordinated the activities of spinners, weavers, dyers, and finishing specialists. The integration of religious and commercial activities within Minoan society created unique advantages for merchants operating in foreign markets. Religious festivals and ceremonial exchanges provided opportunities for commercial negotiations, while also demonstrating the cultural sophistication that enhanced the prestige of Minoan traders. The elaborate gifts exchanged during religious ceremonies often included valuable trade goods that served dual functions as religious offerings and commercial samples that could attract potential customers. The elaborate commercial networks that connected Minoan merchants with markets throughout the Mediterranean required sophisticated administrative centres capable of managing complex economic operations, coordinating craft production, and housing the specialised personnel essential to maintaining Crete's trading empire. The palace complexes that emerged during the New Palace period represented revolutionary achievements in architectural design and urban planning that established new standards for monumental construction throughout the ancient world. These extraordinary structures combined functional efficiency with aesthetic grandeur, creating environments that served simultaneously as administrative headquarters, religious centres, craft production facilities, and elite residential quarters. The reconstructed palace at Knossos, covering nearly 3 hectares and rising to 4 stories in some sections, demonstrated architectural innovations that would influence Mediterranean construction techniques for centuries. The complex's labyrinthine layout, with over 1,300 interconnected rooms, corridors and courtyards, reflected sophisticated planning that accommodated diverse functional requirements while maintaining structural integrity across the entire massive structure. The builders employed a modular construction system where individual room units could be added or modified without compromising the stability of adjacent areas, enabling the palace to evolve organically as administrative needs changed and expanded. The central court at Knossos, measuring precisely 50 by 25 metres and oriented along a perfect north-south axis, served as the organisational heart of the entire complex. This vast paved area, constructed from carefully fitted limestone slabs set on a foundation of crushed stone and clay, could accommodate gatherings of over 1,000 people during religious ceremonies, administrative assemblies, or diplomatic receptions. The court's precise orientation aligned with astronomical phenomena that were significant in Minoan religious practices, while its elevated position provided drainage that prevented water accumulation during Crete's winter rainy season. Surrounding the central court, the palace's various wings demonstrated specialised architectural solutions for different functional requirements. The western wing housed the most formal reception areas, including the throne room with its elaborate gypsum benches and restored griffin frescoes. The throne itself, carved from a single block of gypsum and featuring a distinctive high back with undulating curves, represented the pinnacle of Minoan stone carving artistry. Adjacent lustral basins, accessed by stone steps descending below floor level, incorporated sophisticated waterproofing techniques using hydraulic cement that remained effective for centuries. The eastern wing contained the palace's most innovative architectural feature, the grand staircase that descended 4 flights through multiple levels while maintaining structural stability across the entire vertical span. This remarkable engineering achievement utilised massive stone steps supported by distinctive Minoan columns that tapered from top to bottom, painted bright red with black cushion capitals that provided both structural support and visual drama. The staircase's central light well, measuring approximately 6 by 4 metres, brought natural illumination to all levels while creating a vertical air circulation system that maintained comfortable temperatures throughout the year. The lightwell system at Knossos represented one of the most sophisticated architectural innovations of the Bronze Age, providing natural lighting and ventilation for interior spaces that would otherwise have remained dark and poorly ventilated. These vertical shafts, strategically positioned throughout the palace complex, created pressure differentials that drew fresh air through ground-level openings and exhausted stale air through rooftop vents. The system's effectiveness depended on precise calculations of shaft dimensions, opening sizes, and airflow patterns that required advanced understanding of fluid dynamics principles. Ventilation systems throughout the palace incorporated additional features that maintained air quality and temperature control in different types of spaces. Storage areas featured small openings near floor level that allowed cool air to enter, while preventing moisture accumulation that could damage stored commodities. Workshop areas included larger ventilation openings that removed smoke, fumes, and excess heat generated by craft production activities. Residential quarters utilised adjustable wooden shutters that could regulate airflow according to seasonal conditions and occupant preferences. The palace's sophisticated drainage infrastructure surpassed contemporary engineering achievements throughout the Mediterranean world. The main drainage channel, constructed from precisely fitted stone blocks and measuring over 1 metre in height, incorporated inspection chambers at regular intervals where maintenance crews could access the system without disrupting palace operations. Secondary drainage lines, built from carefully joined terracotta pipes, connected every major room and courtyard to the central system through a network that totalled over 2 kilometres in length throughout the entire complex. Advanced water management extended beyond drainage to include freshwater supply systems that brought spring water from sources several kilometres distant. Stone-lined aqueducts, following carefully calculated gradients that maintained steady flow rates, delivered water to distribution points throughout the palace. Bronze spigots and valves, manufactured with precision-machined components, controlled water flow to different areas according to usage requirements. Storage cisterns carved into bedrock beneath the palace provided reserve capacity during dry periods when spring flows decreased. Storage facilities in the Western magazines demonstrated the enormous scale of economic activities coordinated through the palace administration. Over 400 pythoi, with individual capacities ranging from 50 to over 1,000 litres, provided total storage volume exceeding 75,000 litres for grain, oil, wine and other commodities. These massive ceramic vessels required specialised manufacturing techniques that ensured structural integrity despite their enormous size and weight when filled. Stone-lined cists built into magazine floors offered additional storage for valuable items, including precious metals, exotic spices and imported luxury goods. The magazines incorporated sophisticated environmental control features that maintained optimal storage conditions for different types of commodities. Thick walls provided thermal insulation that minimized temperature fluctuations, while carefully designed ventilation openings prevented moisture accumulation without allowing excessive air circulation that could accelerate spoilage. Raised platforms kept storage vessels above potential flood levels, while drainage channels around the magazine perimeters directed any water infiltration away from stored goods. Workshop areas within the palace complex housed specialised craftsmen producing luxury goods for both local use and export trade. Bronze working facilities contained sophisticated furnaces capable of reaching temperatures exceeding 1,100 degrees Celsius, necessary for melting copper and tin alloys used in high-quality bronze production. These furnaces incorporated advanced air supply systems using leather bellows operated by teams of workers who could maintain consistent temperatures for extended periods, required by complex metallurgical processes. Stone carving workshops featured specialised work surfaces, precision cutting tools, and water supply systems that enabled craftsmen to work exotic materials imported from throughout the Mediterranean. Grinding wheels powered by human labour provided the abrasive action necessary for shaping hard stones, while bronze tools with carefully maintained cutting edges enabled detailed carving work. Water channels supplied the continuous flow required for cooling cutting tools and washing away stone dust that could interfere with precision work. The palace at Phaistos, constructed on terraces carved into the hillside overlooking the fertile Mezara plain, demonstrated how Minoan architects adapted their sophisticated building techniques to challenging topographical conditions. The builders created level construction surfaces through massive terracing operations that required moving thousands of tons of earth and rock while constructing retaining walls capable of supporting multi-storey structures. These retaining walls, built from carefully fitted limestone blocks weighing up to 3 tons each, incorporated drainage systems that prevented water pressure build-up that could cause structural failure. The Western Court at Phaistos became one of the most impressive public spaces in the ancient world, measuring approximately 50 by 40 metres and paved with stone slabs that created a perfectly level surface suitable for large gatherings. The court's construction required precise surveying techniques to achieve the uniform grade necessary for proper drainage, while the massive stone blocks used in paving demanded sophisticated lifting and positioning equipment. Raised walkways around the court's perimeter provided elevated viewing areas for spectators during public ceremonies, while also serving as covered passages during inclement weather. Storage facilities at Phaistos reflected the palace's role as administrative centre for Crete's most productive agricultural region. The magazines contained pithoi even larger than those at Knossos, with some vessels capable of holding over 1,000 litres of grain or oil. Linear tablets found in storage contexts record deliveries from dozens of settlements throughout the Mezara plain, indicating that palace administrators coordinated agricultural production across territories encompassing hundreds of square kilometres. The systematic organisation of these records required specialised scribal training and standardised accounting procedures that enabled accurate tracking of complex economic transactions. The residential quarters at Phaistos incorporated luxury amenities that rivaled contemporary palaces throughout the eastern Mediterranean. Private bathroom facilities featured terracotta bathtubs with sophisticated drainage connections, while toilet areas included running water systems for waste removal. Elaborate fresco decorations transformed residential spaces into artistic environments that displayed the wealth and cultural sophistication of palace inhabitants. Heating systems using hypercaust principles, where heated air circulated through wall cavities, provided comfort during Crete's mild but sometimes chilly winter months. The palace at Malea, though smaller than its counterparts at Knossos and Phaistos, demonstrated architectural innovations specifically adapted to its role as a centre for maritime trade and craft production. The builders incorporated extensive workshop areas near the palace's northern entrance, where goods arriving by sea could be processed before distribution throughout Crete's interior. These workshops contained specialised equipment for different types of craft production, including pottery kilns with precise temperature control systems and metalworking furnaces designed for processing imported raw materials. The famous Kurnos stone at Malea, a circular limestone platform with 34 cup-shaped depressions around its perimeter and a larger central depression, exemplified the sophisticated stone carving techniques employed by Minoan craftsmen. This unique ritual object, measuring nearly 1 metre in diameter and carved from a single block of limestone, required exceptional skill in working hard stone materials. The precision of the carved depressions, each perfectly circular and uniformly sized, demonstrated mastery of specialised tools and techniques that enabled creation of complex three-dimensional forms in resistant materials. Harbour facilities associated with the Malea Palace incorporated advanced engineering solutions for managing maritime traffic and protecting vessels from seasonal storms. Stone-built quays provided secure mooring for merchant ships, while breakwater construction protected the harbour from wave action during winter storms. Warehouse facilities near the harbour featured specialised storage areas for different types of trade goods, with separate sections for pottery, textiles, metals, and perishable commodities that required specific environmental conditions. The palace at Zakros, located on Crete's eastern coast and serving as the primary gateway for trade with the Levant and Egypt, demonstrated architectural adaptations for managing long-distance commercial operations. The complex incorporated extensive storage facilities designed specifically for handling imported goods, with specialised areas for different types of foreign merchandise. Administrative quarters contained archives where linear scribes maintained detailed records of international trade transactions, diplomatic correspondence, and customs procedures governing foreign commerce. Advanced construction techniques employed at all major palace sites revealed standardized approaches to architectural challenges that suggest coordination between different building projects. Ashlar masonry, where stone blocks were cut to precise rectangular shapes and fitted together with minimal gaps, required specialized stone-cutting tools and considerable expertise. The consistency of construction quality across different sites indicates that skilled craftsmen moved between projects or that technical knowledge was systematically shared among building teams through formal training programs. Foundation construction at palace sites utilized sophisticated techniques that provided stability on diverse geological conditions throughout Crete. At Knossos, builders excavated down to bedrock before laying massive limestone blocks that distributed structural loads across stable geological formations. At Phaistos, foundation systems incorporated flexible joints that could accommodate slight ground movement without structural failure, while drainage systems prevented water infiltration that could undermine foundation stability. Wall construction techniques combined structural efficiency with aesthetic appeal through careful selection of building materials and sophisticated masonry methods. Lower walls utilized local limestone blocks that provided structural strength and thermal mass, while upper sections employed lighter materials including wood framing with mud brick infill that reduced overall structural loads. Exterior surfaces featured carefully fitted stone blocks with smooth faces that created impressive visual effects while providing weather protection for interior spaces. Roofing systems incorporated advanced engineering solutions that spanned large interior spaces while supporting upper-story construction and providing weather protection. Wooden beam construction utilized carefully selected timber with appropriate structural properties, while clay tile roofing provided durable weather protection with attractive visual appearance. Drainage systems integrated with roofing collected rainwater for storage, while preventing structural damage from water infiltration. Interior finishing techniques achieved unprecedented levels of sophistication through careful selection of materials and advanced craftsmanship methods. Gypsum plaster walls provided smooth surfaces suitable for fresco decoration, while also contributing to interior climate control through their thermal properties. Floor construction utilized various materials, including stone slabs, ceramic tiles, and wooden planking according to functional requirements and aesthetic preferences of different spaces. The influence of Minoan architectural principles extended far beyond Crete to impact construction techniques throughout the Mediterranean region. Mycenaean palace construction on mainland Greece incorporated numerous features derived from Minoan prototypes, including central court layouts, sophisticated drainage systems, and advanced storage facilities. The Megaron Hall concept that became central to later Greek architecture showed clear influences from Minoan palatial design, while construction techniques including ashlar masonry and column design influenced building traditions throughout the Aegean region for centuries following the decline of Minoan civilization. The sophisticated architectural achievements and urban planning innovations that characterize New Palace period construction provided the cultural framework for artistic developments that would establish Minoan civilization as the creative centre of the Bronze Age Mediterranean. Within the workshops and storage areas of these monumental palace complexes, specialised craftsmen developed techniques and aesthetic principles that transformed functional objects into works of art, creating a distinctive visual culture that influenced artistic traditions throughout the ancient world. Archaeological evidence from palace sites, residential quarters and burial contexts reveals the extraordinary scope of Minoan artistic achievement, encompassing pottery production, fresco painting, metalworking, stone carving, and luxury goods manufacturing that combined technical mastery with innovative design concepts. The evolution of Minoan pottery styles from the early Minoan period through the height of New Palace period production demonstrates a continuous refinement of both technical capabilities and aesthetic sensibilities that culminated in some of the finest ceramics ever produced in the ancient world. Early Minoan pottery began with relatively simple geometric patterns applied to basic vessel forms, but even these early examples displayed sophisticated understanding of ceramic technology and decorative principles that would guide later developments. The Perga-style ceramics of the early Minoan second period featured burnished red and black surfaces decorated with geometric patterns including parallel lines, cross-hatching, and simple spiral motifs that created dynamic visual effects through careful placement and proportional relationships. The transition from geometric to naturalistic decoration occurred gradually during the Middle Minoan period as potters gained confidence in their technical abilities and began experimenting with more complex decorative schemes. Vasiliki ware represented a crucial intermediate stage in this development, featuring mottled red and black surfaces created through controlled oxidation and reduction during firing. The production of these distinctive surface effects required precise timing and temperature control that could only be achieved by master craftsmen with extensive experience in kiln management and clay preparation techniques. The breakthrough to fully naturalistic decoration came with the development of Kamara's ware during the Middle Minoan period, pottery that combined technical excellence with artistic innovation to create vessels of unprecedented beauty and sophistication. These masterpieces featured thin-walled construction that required exceptional skill in wheel throwing, while their complex polychrome decorations incorporated marine motifs, floral patterns, and abstract designs that demonstrated detailed observation of natural phenomena. The production of Kamara's ware demanded multiple firings with carefully controlled atmospheric conditions to achieve the brilliant white, red, and yellow pigments that characterize these exceptional ceramics. Marine motifs dominated much of the finest Minoan pottery production, reflecting the civilization's intimate relationship with the sea and its creatures. Octopus stirrup jars from the late Minoan period displayed remarkable naturalistic accuracy in their depictions of these marine animals, with tentacles flowing gracefully around vessel surfaces in compositions that enhanced the pot's three-dimensional forms. The artist responsible for these decorations possessed detailed knowledge of octopus anatomy and behaviour, accurately rendering the creature's muscular tentacles, bulbous heads, and distinctive eye structures with scientific precision that rivaled modern biological illustrations. Dolphin decorations appeared on numerous vessel types throughout the New Palace period, typically arranged in dynamic swimming poses that conveyed the grace and playfulness of these marine mammals. Minoan artists captured the distinctive curved bodies, elongated snouts, and dorsal fins of dolphins with remarkable accuracy, often depicting them in groups that suggested the social behaviour patterns observed in living populations. The integration of dolphin motifs with vessel forms demonstrated sophisticated understanding of decorative composition. with the animals' flowing movements enhancing the visual appeal of functional pottery shapes. Floral motifs in Minoan pottery decoration revealed equally detailed observation of plant life, with accurate renderings of lilies, crocuses, papyrus, and other flowering plants that grew in Cretan environments or were imported from foreign lands. The famous lily jars from Knossos featured elaborate compositions where flowering plants created complex decorative schemes that completely covered vessel surfaces while maintaining perfect balance and visual harmony. These floral decorations required botanical knowledge that enabled artists to render accurately the distinctive characteristics of different plant species, including leaf shapes, flower structures, and growth patterns. The technical mastery required for the finest Minoan pottery production involves sophisticated understanding of clay preparation, wheel throwing, surface treatment, and firing techniques that took years to master. Clay sources throughout Crete provided raw materials with different working properties and firing characteristics, requiring potters to adjust their techniques according to the specific clay bodies they employed. The finest vessels utilized highly refined clays that had been carefully processed to remove impurities and achieve uniform particle size distributions that enabled thin wall construction and smooth surface finishes. Wheel throwing techniques employed by Minoan potters achieved levels of precision that enabled creation of vessels with walls less than 2 mm thick, while maintaining perfect symmetry and structural integrity. The potter's wheels used in these operations were likely heavy stone discs that maintained steady rotation speeds through momentum, enabling craftsmen to maintain consistent wall thickness throughout the forming process. The skill required for such precise work demanded years of training and constant practice to develop the hand-eye coordination necessary for creating vessels of exceptional quality. Surface treatment techniques for the finest Minoan pottery involved multiple stages of preparation, decoration, and finishing that transformed basic ceramic forms into artistic masterpieces. Initial surface preparation included careful smoothing and polishing to create flawless bases for decorative applications. Slip applications provided coloured backgrounds that enhanced the visual impact of painted decorations, while burnishing techniques created lustrous surfaces that reflected light and enhanced colour intensity. Fresco painting represented perhaps the most spectacular achievement of Minoan artistic culture, transforming architectural spaces into immersive visual environments that combined aesthetic beauty with narrative content and symbolic meaning. The technical requirements for successful fresco production involved sophisticated understanding of plaster preparation, pigment chemistry, and painting techniques that enabled artists to create durable decorations capable of surviving for millennia. The finest Minoan frescoes displayed mastery of composition, colour harmony, and naturalistic representation that established new standards for wall painting throughout the Mediterranean world. The Bull Leaper fresco from Knossos exemplified the dynamic energy and technical excellence that characterized the finest Minoan wall paintings. This masterpiece depicted 3 athletic figures engaged in the dangerous sport of bull leaping, with one performer grasping the charging bull's horns while preparing to vault over its back, another figure captured in mid-leap above the animal, and a third athlete positioned to assist with the landing. The artist's ability to capture the split-second timing and muscular tension involved in this spectacular performance required exceptional observational skills and artistic technique. The composition of the Bull Leaper fresco demonstrated sophisticated understanding of movement and visual rhythm that created compelling narrative drama within the constraints of architectural space. The bull's massive body occupied the central portion of the composition, its powerful muscles rendered with anatomical accuracy that conveyed the animal's strength and unpredictable nature. The human figures displayed idealized proportions and graceful movements that emphasized their athletic abilities while suggesting the spiritual significance of their dangerous performance. Colour usage in the Bull Leaper fresco revealed advanced understanding of pigment properties and their psychological effects on viewers. The bull's dark body contrasted dramatically with the lighter skin tones of the human performers, while the blue background suggested sky or water that enhanced the composition's sense of movement and space. Red accents in clothing and decorative elements provided visual punctuation that guided viewers' attention through the narrative sequence while maintaining overall compositional unity. The dolphin fresco from the Queen's Megaron at Knossos transformed architectural space into an underwater paradise where marine life played among coral formations and aquatic plants. This remarkable painting covered all four walls of the room, creating an immersive environment where viewers felt surrounded by the sea and its inhabitants. The artist's detailed knowledge of marine ecosystems enabled accurate depiction of the complex relationships between different species and their underwater habitats. Individual dolphins in the fresco displayed remarkable naturalistic accuracy in their anatomical details, swimming poses, and behavioural characteristics. The artist captured the distinctive bottle-shaped snouts, streamlined bodies, and curved dorsal fins that enabled identification of specific dolphin species found in Mediterranean waters. Swimming poses varied throughout the composition, with some dolphins depicted in graceful arcing leaps while others swam in more relaxed horizontal positions that suggested the natural variety of movement patterns observed in living populations. The marine environment depicted in the dolphin fresco included accurate representations of sea urchins, fish, and aquatic vegetation that demonstrated detailed observation of underwater ecosystems. Coral formations provided structural elements that organised the composition while creating realistic habitats for the various marine creatures. The artist's ability to render the complex three-dimensional relationships between different organisms in their natural environment required exceptional observational skills and artistic technique. The Prince of the Lilies fresco, discovered in the South Propylaea at Knossos, depicted a male figure wearing an elaborate ceremonial dress while moving through a landscape of flowering plants. This painting exemplified the sophisticated fashion and personal adornment that characterized Minoan elite culture, with detailed rendering of clothing, jewelry, and hairstyles that provided valuable information about New Palace period material culture. The figure's confident posture and elaborate dress suggested high social status and possible religious or political authority. The clothing depicted in the Prince of the Lilies fresco included a distinctive loincloth decorated with geometric patterns, elaborate belt with metal fittings, and ornamental accessories that demonstrated the sophisticated textile production and metalworking capabilities of Minoan craftsmen. The figure's hairstyle featured long curls arranged in complex patterns that required considerable time and skill to create and maintain, suggesting access to specialized personal servants or beauticians. Jewelry elements including armlets, necklaces, and possibly earrings displayed the wealth and status of the individual portrayed. Landscape elements in the Prince of the Lilies fresco revealed sophisticated understanding of plant growth patterns and seasonal variations in natural environments. The lily plants depicted in the composition displayed accurate botanical details, including leaf shapes, flower structures, and root systems that enabled identification of specific species. The artist's ability to integrate human figures with natural environments demonstrated advanced compositional skills that created harmonious relationships between different visual elements. Metalworking achievements during the New Palace period represented some of the most sophisticated Bronze Age technology, combining advanced metallurgical knowledge with artistic innovation to create objects that served both functional and aesthetic purposes. Minoan bronze workers developed alloy compositions that optimized the mechanical properties of finished products for specific applications, while also achieving distinctive visual effects through controlled surface treatments and decorative techniques. The technical knowledge required for such precise metallurgical control represented centuries of accumulated experience and systematic experimentation with different raw materials and production methods. Bronze vessels from New Palace period context demonstrated exceptional craftsmanship in both forming techniques and decorative applications that transformed utilitarian objects into works of art. Large bronze cauldrons discovered at palace sites featured elaborate handles cast in the forms of bulls' heads, human figures, or complex geometric patterns that required sophisticated foundry techniques and finishing methods. The integration of decorative elements with functional requirements demanded careful engineering that ensured structural integrity while achieving desired aesthetic effects. Weapons production during the New Palace period achieved remarkable sophistication in both metallurgical technology and artistic decoration that created objects valued as much for their beauty as their practical effectiveness. Bronze daggers and swords featured carefully controlled carbon content that provided optimal hardness and flexibility for combat use, while their hilts and scabbards incorporated precious materials including gold, silver, ivory, and exotic stones that demonstrated the wealth and status of their owners. The famous cat and bird dagger from Mycenaean, likely of Minoan manufacture, displayed inlay techniques that created naturalistic scenes of remarkable artistic quality. The production of such elaborate weapons required collaboration between multiple specialists, including metallurgists, stone carvers, and precious metal workers who coordinated their efforts to create unified artistic compositions. The technical challenges involved in combining different materials with varying thermal expansion rates and working properties demanded sophisticated understanding of material science principles that enabled durable construction despite the complex multi-material assemblies involved. Jewellery production represented another area where Minoan craftsmen achieved exceptional artistic and technical accomplishments that influenced luxury goods manufacturing throughout the Mediterranean world. Gold working techniques included sophisticated methods for creating thin sheets, fine wires, and complex three-dimensional forms that enabled production of elaborate ornaments with minimal material waste. The famous bee pendant from Malea demonstrated mastery of granulation techniques, where tiny gold spheres were fused to larger surfaces to create textured decorative effects of remarkable delicacy and precision. The technical requirements for successful granulation work involved precise temperature control during heating operations that fused the small gold spheres without melting them completely or damaging the underlying surfaces. This technique required specialized tools, controlled atmosphere furnaces, and exceptional manual dexterity that could only be developed through years of training and practice. The artistic effects achieved through granulation created jewellery of unprecedented sophistication that established new standards for luxury goods production throughout the ancient world. Signet rings produced during the New Palace period combined sophisticated metalworking techniques with miniature artistic compositions that depicted religious scenes, mythological narratives, and ceremonial activities with remarkable detail and precision. These rings served both practical functions as personal seals and symbolic purposes as indicators of social status and religious authority. The tiny scale of the decorative compositions required exceptional artistic skill and specialized engraving tools that enabled creation of detailed scenes within areas measuring only a few square centimeters. Religious scenes depicted on Minoan signet rings provided valuable insights into ceremonial practices and spiritual beliefs that complemented information derived from larger-scale artistic works. Tree worship ceremonies appeared frequently, showing female figures performing ritual dances around sacred trees while holding various ceremonial objects. These miniature compositions included accurate botanical details and costume elements that demonstrated the artist's detailed knowledge of both natural phenomena and cultural practices. Stone carving during the New Palace period achieved remarkable sophistication in working both local Cretan materials and exotic stones imported from throughout the Mediterranean world. Craftsmen developed specialized tools and techniques that enabled them to work successfully with materials ranging from soft serpentine and limestone to extremely hard rocks, including porphyry, basalt, and various types of quartz. The diversity of stone types utilised in Minoan carving required extensive knowledge of different materials' working properties and appropriate techniques for achieving desired results with each type. Vessel production represented one of the most technically demanding applications of Minoan stone carving skills, requiring craftsmen to hollow out solid blocks of stone while maintaining uniform wall thickness and achieving complex three-dimensional forms. Large pithoi carved from single blocks of stone required exceptional skill in planning and execution, as any error in the hollowing process could destroy months of careful work. The precision achieved in these productions demonstrated mastery of specialized tools and techniques that enabled creation of functional vessels with artistic qualities that rivaled contemporary pottery production. Seal carving represented perhaps the most technically demanding application of Minoan stoneworking skills, requiring artists to create detailed compositions within the tiny surfaces of personal seals, measuring only a few centimetres in diameter. The hardest stones were preferred for seal production because they provided sharp, clear impressions and resisted wear during repeated use. Working these resistant materials required diamond-pointed tools and abrasive techniques that enabled precise cutting of fine details despite the extreme hardness of the raw materials. The artistic compositions created on Minoan seals demonstrated remarkable creativity in adapting complex narrative scenes to the constraints of tiny circular or oval surfaces. Artists developed sophisticated techniques for suggesting depth and movement within severely limited spaces, using overlapping forms, varied line weights, and compositional arrangements that created compelling visual effects despite the miniature scale. The consistency of artistic quality across thousands of surviving seals indicates the existence of formal training programs that maintained high standards while enabling individual artistic expression within established conventions. The sophisticated artistic achievements and advanced craftsmanship techniques that flourished within Minoan palace complexes required equally sophisticated administrative systems to coordinate production, manage resources, and maintain records of the complex economic activities that sustained this remarkable civilization. Archaeological excavations at palace sites throughout Crete have yielded thousands of clay tablets inscribed with a distinctive script known as Linear A, providing tantalizing glimpses into the administrative machinery that operated behind the scenes of Minoan cultural achievements. These documents, discovered in storage areas, administrative quarters, and workshop contexts, represent one of the most significant unsolved puzzles in ancient Mediterranean studies, offering crucial evidence for understanding Minoan society while simultaneously frustrating scholars with their continued resistance to complete decipherment. The discovery of Linear A tablets began with Sir Arthur Evans's excavations at Knossos in the early 1900s, when workers uncovered caches of clay documents in palace storage areas and administrative offices. Evans initially focused his attention on the later Linear B script, which appeared in greater quantities and seemed more promising for decipherment efforts. The Linear A tablets, numbering in the hundreds rather than thousands, received less immediate attention but gradually emerged as equally important sources of information about Minoan administrative practices and linguistic characteristics. Subsequent excavations at Phaistos, Hagia Triada, Chania, and other major Minoan sites have expanded the corpus of Linear A documents to over 1,400 inscriptions, providing a substantial database for ongoing decipherment attempts. The physical characteristics of Linear A tablets reveal sophisticated record-keeping systems that track diverse aspects of palace economic activities with remarkable precision and organisational complexity. Most tablets were created from local clay that was shaped into rectangular or palm leaf-shaped formats, with dimensions ranging from small tags measuring only a few centimetres to larger administrative documents exceeding 20 centimetres in length. The clay was inscribed while still damp using bronze or wooden styluses that created the distinctive linear marks from which the script derives its modern name. After inscription, the tablets were either air-dried for temporary storage or fired in kilns for permanent preservation, with most surviving examples having been accidentally fired during the destruction events that ended the New Palace period. The script itself consists of approximately 90 syllabic signs, plus a smaller number of ideographic symbols representing specific commodities, animals, and numerical concepts relevant to administrative record-keeping. The syllabic signs appear to represent combinations of consonants and vowels, similar to other Bronze Age writing systems used throughout the Eastern Mediterranean, while the ideographic elements provide direct representations of objects and concepts that could be understood regardless of linguistic differences. This dual system approach enabled palace administrators to maintain detailed records that combined the linguistic text with visual symbols that clarified meaning and reduced ambiguity in commercial transactions. Linear inscriptions appear on various types of objects beyond the clay tablets that constitute the majority of surviving examples. Stone vessels, bronze implements, and ceramic containers bear short inscriptions that may represent ownership marks, dedicatory formulas, or manufacturing information. These non-tablet inscriptions provide crucial evidence for the broader social context of Linear A usage, suggesting that literacy extended beyond palace scribes to include craft specialists, religious personnel, and possibly merchants involved in long-distance trade activities. The geographical distribution of Linear A inscriptions encompasses not only major palace sites, but also smaller settlements throughout Crete, and even locations in the Cycladic Islands, indicating widespread adoption of this writing system throughout the Minoan cultural sphere. The administrative content of Linear A tablets reveals complex economic systems that coordinated agricultural production, craft manufacturing and trade activities across extensive territories. Tablets from Hagia Triada record deliveries of grain, olives, figs and livestock from various locations throughout southern Crete, with specific quantities and the names or titles of individuals responsible for each contribution. These records demonstrate sophisticated accounting procedures that tracked both incoming resources and their subsequent distribution to palace personnel, craft workers, and religious activities. The systematic nature of these records suggests standardized administrative procedures that operated according to established protocols governing tribute collection, resource allocation, and inventory management. Storage inventories recorded on Linear A tablets provide detailed information about the scale and diversity of palace economic activities. Documents from Knossos list contents of individual pathoi, specifying not only quantities but also quality grades and origins of stored commodities. Wine records distinguish between different vintages and production locations, while oil inventories specify whether the contents were intended for consumption, religious use, or industrial applications such as textile processing or metalworking operations. The precision of these inventories enabled palace administrators to monitor consumption rates, plan for seasonal variations in supply, and coordinate distribution according to established priorities and protocols. Personnel records preserved in Linear A tablets reveal the complex social hierarchies and specialized occupational categories that characterized Minoan palace administration. Documents list individuals with various titles and responsibilities, including scribes, craft supervisors, religious officials, and agricultural managers who coordinated different aspects of palace operations. Some tablets appear to record work assignments, payment distributions, or performance evaluations for palace employees, suggesting sophisticated human resource management systems that tracked individual contributions and allocated rewards accordingly. The diversity of occupational categories mentioned in these records reflects the specialized division of labor that enabled Minoan palaces to coordinate complex, multifaceted operations. Religious context provides some of the most intriguing Linear A inscriptions, with tablets and other objects bearing texts that appear to record ritual activities, divine names, or ceremonial procedures. The famous libation table from Palais Castro bears a lengthy linear A inscription that may represent a religious dedication or ritual formula, while shorter inscriptions on ceremonial vessels could indicate divine names or ritual instructions. These religious texts offer potential insights into Minoan spiritual beliefs and practices, but their interpretation remains highly speculative due to the continued challenges in deciphering the underlying language. The relationship between Linear A and the later Linear B script, used by Mycenaean Greeks, provides crucial evidence for understanding both writing systems and the cultural transitions that occurred during the Late Bronze Age. Linear B, successfully deciphered by Michael Ventris in the 1950s, clearly evolved from Linear A through a process of adaptation that modified the earlier script to accommodate the phonological characteristics of the Greek language. Approximately 60% of Linear A syllabic signs have direct equivalents in Linear B, indicating substantial continuity in basic writing principles, despite the linguistic differences between the two systems. The modifications made in adapting Linear A to create Linear B reveal important information about the phonological characteristics of both the Minoan language and Mycenaean Greek. Signs that were eliminated during the transition likely represented sounds that did not exist in Greek but were present in the Minoan language, while new signs added to Linear B accommodated Greek phonemes that were absent from the original Minoan system. The pattern of these changes suggests that the Minoan language included sound combinations that were foreign to Greek speakers, possibly including consonant clusters or vowel distinctions that did not exist in Indo-European linguistic traditions. Comparative analysis of Linear A and Linear B administrative practices reveals both continuities and changes in palace record-keeping systems during the transition from Minoan to Mycenaean control. Both scripts utilize similar ideographic symbols for representing commodities, animals, and numerical concepts, suggesting that basic accounting procedures remained consistent despite the linguistic changes. However, Linear B records show greater emphasis on military equipment, personnel rosters, and land tenure arrangements that reflect the more militarized character of Mycenaean society compared to the apparently more commercially oriented Minoan administration. The numerical systems employed in Linear A tablets demonstrate sophisticated mathematical concepts that enabled complex calculations and statistical analysis of economic data. The basic numerical notation utilized decimal principles with special symbols for units, tens, hundreds, and thousands that allowed efficient recording of large quantities. Fractional notation enabled precise recording of partial units, while specialized symbols for different measurement systems accommodated the diverse types of commodities tracked in palace inventories. The mathematical sophistication evident in these records suggests that Minoan administrators possessed advanced quantitative skills that enabled them to manage complex economic operations with remarkable precision. Place names preserved in Linear A inscriptions provide valuable evidence for understanding the geographical extent of Minoan administrative control and the linguistic characteristics of pre-Greek Cretan toponymy. Several location names recorded in Linear tablets can be identified with known archaeological sites, enabling researchers to map the territorial boundaries of different palace administrations and understand the spatial organization of Minoan political control. These place names often display distinctive phonological characteristics that differ from later Greek toponymy, suggesting substrate linguistic influences that survived the transition to Greek dominance. Personal names appearing in Linear A documents offer additional insights into Minoan naming practices and possible linguistic affiliations. Many names display distinctive suffixes and phonological patterns that appear unrelated to Indo-European linguistic traditions, supporting theories that the Minoan language belonged to a different language family entirely. Some names may represent titles or occupational designations rather than personal identifiers, complicating efforts to understand Minoan social organization and individual identity concepts. The diversity of nameforms suggests a complex society, with multiple ethnic or linguistic groups integrated within the broader Minoan cultural framework. Religious terminology preserved in Linear A inscriptions provides tantalizing glimpses of Minoan spiritual beliefs and ceremonial practices, though interpretation remains highly speculative due to decipherment challenges. Certain frequently recurring sign combinations appear in contexts that suggest divine names or ritual formulas, while specific terms seem associated with particular types of religious activities or ceremonial objects. The libation table from Palicastro contains what may be the longest continuous religious text in Linear A, but its meaning remains largely mysterious despite decades of scholarly analysis and interpretation attempts. The geographical distribution of Linear A inscriptions reveals the extensive reach of Minoan administrative systems and cultural influence throughout the southern Aegean region. Tablets and inscribed objects have been discovered not only at major Cretan palace sites, but also at smaller settlements throughout the island and at Minoan colonies in the Cycladic Islands. This widespread distribution suggests that Linear A literacy extended beyond palace scribes to include local administrators, merchants and religious personnel who required writing skills for their professional activities. The standardization of script forms across different locations indicates centralized training programs or systematic dissemination of literacy skills throughout Minoan territory. Ongoing scholarly debates about linear decipherment have produced numerous theories regarding the linguistic affiliations of the Minoan language, though none has achieved widespread acceptance among researchers. Some scholars propose connections with Anatolian languages based on perceived similarities in phonological patterns and morphological structures, while others suggest relationships with Semitic languages of the Levant or North African linguistic families. The limited size of the Linear A corpus and the predominantly administrative nature of surviving texts complicate decipherment efforts by providing insufficient evidence for understanding grammatical structures and vocabulary beyond basic economic terminology. Recent computational approaches to Linear A analysis have employed sophisticated statistical methods and machine learning algorithms to identify patterns and relationships within the inscribed texts. These digital humanities projects have revealed previously unrecognized statistical regularities and structural patterns that may provide new insights into the underlying linguistic system. Computer-assisted analysis has also enabled more systematic comparison with other ancient writing systems and languages, potentially identifying previously overlooked connections that could advance decipherment efforts. The cultural significance of Linear A extends beyond its purely linguistic and administrative functions to encompass broader questions about Minoan social organization, political structures, and cultural identity. The development of a sophisticated writing system represents a crucial marker of civilizational advancement that placed Minoan society among the most culturally developed communities of the Bronze Age Mediterranean. The widespread adoption of Linear A literacy suggests a society that valued record-keeping, administrative efficiency, and systematic organization of complex economic and social activities. Archaeological contexts of Linear A discoveries provide additional evidence for understanding the social and cultural significance of literacy within Minoan society. Tablets found in palace archives were clearly part of centralized administrative systems, while inscriptions on religious objects suggest that writing played important roles in ceremonial and spiritual activities. The discovery of Linear A inscriptions in residential contexts at some sites indicates that literacy may have extended beyond professional scribes to include members of the broader elite community who required reading and writing skills for personal or business purposes. The preservation conditions that enabled survival of Linear A tablets provide crucial information about the destruction events that ended the New Palace period and the subsequent abandonment of Minoan palace centres. Most tablets were accidentally fired during conflagrations that destroyed palace complexes around 1450 BC, creating the high-temperature conditions necessary for permanent preservation of clay documents. The systematic nature of these destruction events, evidenced by the consistent firing of administrative archives at multiple sites, suggests coordinated military action rather than natural disasters or accidental fires. The systematic nature of these destruction events, evidenced by the consistent firing of administrative archives at multiple sites, suggests coordinated military action rather than natural disasters or accidental fires. The preservation of linear A tablets through these conflagrations provides modern scholars with invaluable snapshots of Minoan administrative activities at the moment of civilization's collapse, but the very conditions that preserve these records also mark the beginning of fundamental transformations that would reshape Cretan society over the following centuries. Archaeological evidence from sites across Crete reveals a complex pattern of destruction and abandonment that occurred around 1450 BC, marking the transition from the flourishing New Palace period to a dramatically altered cultural landscape. At Knossos, excavations have uncovered clear signs of violent destruction, including collapsed walls, scattered pottery, and burned storage areas that contained the accidentally fired Linear A tablets. The palace's western magazines show evidence of intense fires that reached temperatures sufficient to melt bronze objects and crack massive stone blocks, indicating conflagrations far more severe than typical accidental blazes. The destruction at Phaistos appears equally systematic, with evidence of deliberate dismantling of architectural elements and the removal of valuable objects before the final conflagration. Storage areas that once contained hundreds of pithoi filled with agricultural products show signs of hasty evacuation, with many vessels found broken and scattered as if their contents had been rapidly extracted or abandoned during flight. The palace's elaborate drainage systems were found clogged with debris and rubble, suggesting that maintenance ceased abruptly and that the complex was abandoned for an extended period before the final destruction. Similar patterns of destruction and abandonment characterize other major Minoan centres throughout Crete. At Malea, the palace complex shows evidence of multiple phases of damage and partial reconstruction, indicating that the site experienced repeated disruptions over several decades before its final abandonment. Workshop areas contain partially completed objects and scattered tools, suggesting that craft production ceased suddenly without time for orderly closure of operations. The harbour facilities associated with the palace were found silted up with debris, indicating that maritime activities had ceased for a considerable period before the final destruction. The causes of this widespread destruction have been debated by scholars for decades, with multiple theories proposed to explain the sudden collapse of Minoan palace civilization. The eruption of Thera, a volcanic island approximately 100 kilometers north of Crete, has been suggested as a primary factor in Minoan decline. This massive volcanic explosion, dated to approximately 1628 BC through ice core analysis and radiocarbon dating, was one of the largest volcanic events in recorded history, ejecting an estimated 60 cubic kilometers of material into the atmosphere and creating tsunamis that would have devastated coastal settlements throughout the Aegean region. The Thera eruption's impact on Crete would have been catastrophic through multiple mechanisms. Volcanic ash falling across the island would have destroyed agricultural crops and contaminated water supplies, creating immediate food shortages that could have persisted for several growing seasons. The fine volcanic particles would have infiltrated storage areas, workshops, and residential quarters, making many buildings uninhabitable and forcing widespread population displacement. Tsunamis generated by the volcanic collapse would have devastated Crete's northern coastal settlements, destroying harbour facilities and eliminating the maritime infrastructure essential to Minoan commercial networks. However, the chronological relationship between the Thera eruption and the destruction of Minoan palaces presents significant complications for theories attributing Minoan decline primarily to volcanic catastrophe. Current dating evidence suggests that the eruption occurred around 1628 BC, while the major palace destructions appear to have taken place around 1450 BC. creating a gap of nearly 2 centuries that is difficult to reconcile with direct causal relationships. Some scholars argue that the volcanic disaster initiated a gradual decline that culminated in the palace destructions, while others contend that the eruption and palace destructions represent separate events with different underlying causes. Seismic activity represents another natural factor that may have contributed to Minoan decline, as Crete's location along active fault lines makes the island susceptible to major earthquakes that could cause widespread structural damage. Archaeological evidence from various Minoan sites includes collapsed walls, tilted columns, and foundation damage consistent with severe seismic events. The sophisticated drainage systems and multi-story construction techniques employed in Minoan architecture, while impressive engineering achievements, may have made palace complexes particularly vulnerable to earthquake damage due to their size and complexity. The earthquake hypothesis gained support from evidence of repeated reconstruction and repair activities at major Minoan sites throughout the Late Bronze Age. At Knossos, archaeologists have identified multiple building phases that suggest ongoing efforts to repair and modify palace structures in response to periodic damage. These reconstruction activities indicate that Minoan communities possessed the technical expertise and organisational capacity to recover from natural disasters, but repeated seismic events could have gradually weakened both physical infrastructure and economic resources necessary for maintaining palace-centred civilization. Internal social and political factors may have contributed to Minoan decline through processes that made the civilization more vulnerable to external pressures or natural disasters. The highly centralized administrative systems that enabled Minoan palaces to coordinate complex economic activities also created potential points of failure if key personnel or institutions were disrupted. The specialized division of labor that characterized Minoan society required continuous coordination between different occupational groups, and breakdowns in communication or authority structures could have cascaded into broader systemic failures. Evidence for internal conflicts during the late Minoan period includes the construction of defensive walls and fortifications at some sites that had previously been undefended. The settlement at Gurnia shows evidence of hastily constructed defensive barriers that utilize stones salvaged from earlier buildings, suggesting emergency responses to perceived military threats. Similar defensive preparations appear at other sites throughout eastern Crete, indicating widespread concerns about security that contrast sharply with the apparently peaceful conditions of earlier periods. The emergence of Mycenaean Greek influence on Crete represents the most significant cultural transformation of the late Minoan period, fundamentally altering the island's political organisation, administrative systems, and material culture. Archaeological evidence from Knossos and other sites reveals the gradual adoption of Mycenaean pottery styles, architectural features, and burial practices that indicate either peaceful cultural assimilation or military conquest by mainland Greek populations. The transition from Linear A to Linear B script for administrative record-keeping marks a crucial linguistic shift that reflects the replacement of Minoan administrative personnel with Greek-speaking bureaucrats. Mycenaean influence appears first in the archaeological record around 1450 BC, coinciding with the major destruction events that ended the New Palace period at most Minoan sites. At Knossos, however, the palace continued to function under what appears to be Mycenaean control, with Linear B tablets recording administrative activities that follow Greek linguistic patterns while maintaining many traditional Minoan bureaucratic procedures. This continuity suggests that Mycenaean takeover involved the adoption and adaptation of existing administrative systems rather than their complete replacement. The Mycenaean presence on Crete manifested through several distinct material culture changes that archaeologists can trace in the stratigraphic record. Pottery assemblages from post-1450 BC context show increasing percentages of mainland Greek vessel types, including stirrup jars, kyllikes, and other forms that were characteristic of Mycenaean ceramic traditions. these vessels often display decorative motifs derived from Mycenaean artistic traditions, though many examples show hybrid characteristics that combine Greek and Minoan design elements. Burial practices provide particularly clear evidence for cultural transformation during the late Minoan period. Traditional Minoan burial customs, which typically involved collective interments in chamber tombs or tholos structures, were gradually replaced by individual graves that followed Mycenaean practices. Grave goods from these later burials include weapons, armour, and personal ornaments that reflect Mycenaean material culture and social values, contrasting sharply with the predominantly peaceful character of earlier Minoan burial assemblages. The transformation of palace functions under Mycenaean control involved significant changes in administrative priorities and record-keeping practices. Linear B tablets from Knossos record detailed inventories of military equipment, including chariots, weapons, and armour, that suggest a more militarized administrative system than had characterized earlier Minoan palace operations. Personnel records emphasize military titles and hierarchical relationships that reflect the warrior aristocrat social structure typical of Mycenaean civilization. Agricultural administration under Mycenaean control maintained many traditional practices while introducing new elements that reflected different economic priorities. Linear B records continue to track livestock, grain production, and craft activities much as Linear A tablets had done, but with greater emphasis on products relevant to military activities and long-distance trade with mainland Greece. The systematic recording of land tenure arrangements in Linear B tablets represents a significant innovation that may reflect Mycenaean concepts of property ownership that differed from earlier Minoan practices. Religious practices during the late Minoan period show evidence of gradual transformation as Mycenaean Greek religious concepts merged with traditional Minoan spiritual traditions. Archaeological evidence from sanctuary sites reveals continuity in basic ritual activities, but with modifications in ceremonial objects, architectural arrangements, and iconographic elements that reflect changing religious beliefs. The famous snake goddess figurines continue to appear in late Minoan contexts, but with stylistic modifications that suggest evolving concepts of divine representation. The decline of distinctly Minoan cultural practices occurred gradually over several centuries as local traditions were absorbed into the broader Mycenaean cultural sphere. Traditional Minoan artistic motifs, including marine themes, floral decorations, and religious symbols, continue to appear in late Minoan art, but with modifications that reflect Greek aesthetic preferences and cultural values. The sophisticated naturalistic style that had characterized New Palace period art gave way to more stylized and geometric approaches that aligned with Mycenaean artistic traditions. Craft production during the late Minoan period maintained high technical standards while adapting to changed market conditions and cultural preferences. Bronze working continued to employ advanced metallurgical techniques, but with greater emphasis on weapons and military equipment that reflected the more militarized character of Mycenaean society. Pottery production incorporated traditional Minoan technical excellence with decorative schemes that combined local and mainland Greek elements, creating hybrid styles that represented cultural fusion rather than simple replacement. The transformation of urban settlements throughout Crete reflects the broader cultural changes that characterized the late Minoan period. Many smaller settlements were abandoned as populations concentrated in fewer, larger centres that could provide better security and economic opportunities under the new political arrangements. The sophisticated urban planning and infrastructure systems that had characterized New Palace period settlements were often simplified or abandoned as communities adapted to changed circumstances and reduced resources. Trade networks that had connected Minoan Crete with markets throughout the Mediterranean underwent fundamental reorganization as Mycenaean Greeks assumed control over commercial activities. Traditional Minoan trading relationships with Egypt, the Levant, and Anatolia continued to function, but increasingly under Greek direction and according to Mycenaean commercial priorities. The distinctive Minoan pottery that had been highly valued in foreign markets was gradually replaced by Mycenaean products, though some traditional Minoan goods continued to find markets due to their established reputation for quality and craftsmanship. The process of cultural transformation that characterized the late Minoan period represents one of the most significant examples of civilization change in the ancient Mediterranean world. Rather than simple conquest and replacement, the evidence suggests a complex process of cultural fusion where Mycenaean Greek elements gradually merged with traditional Minoan practices to create new hybrid forms that incorporated elements from both traditions. This transformation process would continue for several centuries, ultimately producing the distinctive culture of Iron Age Crete that combined Greek linguistic and political elements with local traditions that preserved important aspects of the earlier Minoan heritage. The complex process of cultural transformation that reshaped late Minoan Crete did not mark the end of Minoan influence on Mediterranean civilization, but rather initiated a remarkable journey of cultural transmission that would carry Minoan traditions, technologies and memories across centuries and continents. As Mycenaean Greek administrators assumed control over Cretan palace centres and Linear B scribes replaced their Linear A predecessors, fundamental elements of Minoan civilization became embedded within the emerging Greek cultural framework, creating a legacy that would profoundly influence classical antiquity and through various channels of transmission continue to shape European civilization into the modern era. The preservation of Minoan traditions within Greek mythology represents one of the most enduring aspects of this cultural transmission, transforming historical memories of Bronze Age Crete into legendary narratives that captured the imagination of later generations. The figure of King Minos, whose name scholars believe derives from a Minoan royal title rather than representing a single historical individual, became central to Greek mythological traditions that preserved distorted but recognizable echoes of actual Minoan practices and beliefs. Classical Greek sources describe Minos as a powerful sea king who ruled a maritime empire from his palace at Knossos, demanding tribute from subject territories throughout the Aegean region in arrangements that closely parallel the administrative systems documented in Linear A tablets. The legendary Labyrinth of Knossos, described in Greek mythology as an elaborate maze constructed to contain the monstrous Minotaur, appears to preserve folk memories of the actual palace complex with its confusing layout of interconnected rooms, corridors and courtyards that could easily disorient unfamiliar visitors. The Greek word labyrinth itself derives from labries, the double axe that served as a sacred symbol throughout Minoan religious practices, suggesting that the mythological maze represented a transformed memory of the palace as a centre of religious authority and ceremonial activities. Archaeological evidence from Knossos reveals that the palace's complex architecture did indeed create a maze-like environment where visitors could easily become lost without knowledgeable guides. The Minotaur legend, describing a creature that was half bull and half human, dwelling within the labyrinth and demanding human sacrifice, likely preserves distorted memories of the bull-leaping ceremonies that were central to Minoan religious practices. The dangerous athletic performances where young athletes vaulted over charging bulls in palace courtyards would have impressed foreign observers as supernatural feats requiring divine intervention or monstrous participation. The tribute of young men and women that Athens supposedly paid to feed the Minotaur may reflect actual practices where subject communities provided personnel for these ceremonial activities, with the inherent dangers of bull leaping transformed in later memory into deliberate human sacrifice. Theseus's victory over the Minotaur and subsequent escape from the labyrinth with the help of Ariadne's thread represents a mythologized version of the Mycenaean takeover of Minoan Crete, with the Greek hero symbolizing the mainland conquerors who ended the power of the Minoan Sea Kings. Ariadne, whose name appears to be of pre-Greek origin and may derive from Minoan religious terminology, represents the local assistance that enabled Mycenaean success, possibly reflecting actual alliances between Greek newcomers and elements of the Minoan elite who facilitated the transition of power. The abandonment of Ariadne on the island of Naxos after her assistance in defeating the Minotaur could symbolise the eventual marginalisation of Minoan collaborators once Mycenaean control was firmly established. The transformation of Minoan religious practices within Greek mythology extended beyond the Minos legends to encompass broader spiritual concepts that influence classical Greek religious thought. The prominence of female deities in Minoan religious iconography contributed to the development of powerful goddess figures in Greek mythology, including Athena, Artemis, and Demeter, whose characteristics and cult practices show clear influences from Bronze Age Aegean religious traditions. The snake-handling priestesses depicted in Minoan art may have contributed to the development of the Pythia at Delphi and other oracular traditions where female religious specialists communicated with divine powers through ecstatic practices. The influence of Minoan artistic traditions on later Greek art manifested through multiple channels of transmission that carried Bronze Age aesthetic principles into classical antiquity. Mycenaean artists who worked on Crete during the late Minoan period absorbed Minoan techniques and design concepts, which they subsequently transmitted to mainland Greece and incorporated into developing Greek artistic traditions. The naturalistic representation of marine life that characterized the finest Minoan pottery and frescoes influenced Greek ceramic decoration for centuries, with dolphin motifs, octopus designs and other sea creatures remaining popular elements in Greek artistic repertoires long after their original Minoan contexts had been forgotten. The sophisticated fresco painting techniques developed by Minoan artists provided crucial foundations for later Greek wall painting traditions, though the specific technical knowledge required for true fresco work was largely lost during the disruptions of the late Bronze Age collapse. Classical Greek artists working in the 5th and 4th centuries BC redeveloped wall painting techniques that showed clear influences from Bronze Age prototypes, particularly in their approach to landscape representation and the integration of human figures with natural environments. The famous garden frescoes from Roman villas demonstrate the persistence of decorative concepts that can be traced back to Minoan palace decorations through centuries of artistic transmission. Architectural influences from Minoan palace construction appeared in various forms throughout later Greek building traditions, though often transformed beyond easy recognition through adaptation to different functional requirements and aesthetic preferences. The concept of organising large architectural complexes around central courtyards, which was fundamental to Minoan palace design, influenced the development of Greek agora layouts and the planning of major sanctuary sites like Olympia and Delphi. The sophisticated drainage and water management systems pioneered by Minoan engineers provided technical knowledge that influenced later Greek urban planning, particularly in the design of fountain houses and public bath facilities. The distinctive Minoan column design, with shafts that tapered from top to bottom and distinctive cushion capitals, influenced the development of Greek architectural orders through complex processes of cultural transmission and artistic evolution. While classical Greek columns followed different proportional systems and decorative schemes, the fundamental concept of using columns as both structural and aesthetic elements in monumental architecture showed clear continuities with Minoan prototypes. The integration of columns with architectural sculpture and decorative painting that characterized classical Greek temples demonstrated sophisticated understanding of the relationship between structural and ornamental elements that had been pioneered in Minoan palace construction. Religious architecture in classical Greece incorporated numerous elements that can be traced to Minoan precedents, though often in transformed contexts that reflected changed spiritual beliefs and ceremonial practices. The concept of creating sacred spaces through careful attention to landscape setting, architectural orientation, and decorative programs showed clear continuities with Minoan sanctuary design. Peak sanctuaries that continued to function throughout the Iron Age provided direct links between Bronze Age religious practices and later Greek cult activities, with some sites maintaining continuous use for over a millennium despite fundamental changes in the surrounding cultural context. The rediscovery of Minoan civilization by Sir Arthur Evans, beginning in 1900 AD, fundamentally transformed scholarly understanding of European prehistory and established new paradigms for archaeological research that continue to influence the discipline today. Evans's excavations at Knossos, conducted over 3 decades with unprecedented scale and systematic methodology, revealed the existence of a sophisticated Bronze Age civilization that predated classical Greek culture by over a millennium. The discovery challenged prevailing assumptions about the development of European civilization and demonstrated that advanced urban societies had flourished in the Aegean region long before the traditionally recognized beginnings of Greek history. The impact of Evans's discoveries extended far beyond academic archaeology to influence broader cultural perceptions of ancient history and European identity. The revelation that Europe's first advanced civilization had developed on Crete rather than in the traditionally emphasized regions of Mesopotamia or Egypt shifted scholarly attention to the Mediterranean as a crucial zone of cultural innovation and exchange. The sophisticated artistic achievements and peaceful character of Minoan civilization, as interpreted by Evans and his contemporaries, provided an alternative model of ancient society that contrasted sharply with the militaristic emphasis of other Bronze Age civilizations. Evans's reconstruction methods at Knossos, while groundbreaking in their ambition and scope, established precedents for archaeological presentation that remain controversial among modern scholars. His decision to rebuild substantial portions of the palace using modern materials and artistic interpretations created a tourist attraction that brought Minoan civilization to public attention, but also introduced elements that may not accurately reflect ancient realities. The famous frescoes that visitors see today at Knossos combine authentic ancient fragments with extensive modern restoration work that reflects early 20th century artistic sensibilities as much as Bronze Age aesthetic principles. The development of Minoan archaeology as a specialized field of study generated methodological innovations that influenced archaeological practice throughout the Mediterranean region and beyond. The systematic excavation techniques pioneered at Minoan sites, including careful stratigraphic recording, comprehensive artifact cataloguing, and interdisciplinary collaboration between archaeologists, art historians, and linguists, established new standards for scientific archaeology. The integration of architectural analysis, artistic interpretation, and textual study that characterized Minoan research provided models for holistic approaches to understanding ancient civilizations. Contemporary scholarly debates about Minoan society reflect the complexity of interpreting archaeological evidence from civilization that left no deciphered historical records and whose cultural practices differed significantly from better documented ancient societies. Questions about gender roles in Minoan society have generated extensive discussion, with some scholars interpreting the prominent female figures in Minoan art as evidence for matriarchal social organisation, while others argue for more conventional patriarchal structures where women held significant religious authority but limited political power. The absence of clearly identifiable male rulers in Minoan iconography contrasts sharply with contemporary civilizations where royal imagery typically emphasized masculine authority and military prowess. The nature of Minoan political organisation remains equally controversial, with ongoing debates about whether the palace centres functioned as independent city-states or as regional administrative centres within a unified island kingdom. Linear A records suggest complex administrative hierarchies and territorial relationships, but the undeciphered nature of the script prevents definitive conclusions about political structures. Some scholars argue for a unified Minoan state centered at Knossos, while others propose a system of competing or cooperating regional powers that maintained cultural unity despite political fragmentation. Recent archaeological discoveries have complicated traditional interpretations of Minoan society by revealing evidence for social stratification, economic inequality, and possibly violent conflicts that contrast with earlier scholarly emphasis on Minoan peacefulness and egalitarianism. Excavations at sites like Chania and Arcanes have uncovered evidence for defensive fortifications and destruction layers that suggest internal conflicts or external threats during various periods of Minoan history. These findings have prompted reassessment of Minoan society as a more complex and potentially conflict-prone civilization than previously recognized. The dating and impact of the Thera eruption continue to generate scholarly controversy, with significant implications for understanding Minoan decline and the broader chronology of late Bronze Age Mediterranean history. Scientific analysis of ice cores from Greenland and tree rings from ancient bristle cone pines has established that the massive volcanic eruption occurred around 1628 BC, significantly earlier than the 1450 BC date for major Minoan palace destructions. This chronological gap has forced scholars to reconsider the relationship between natural disasters and cultural collapse, with current research suggesting that the eruption initiated a gradual decline rather than causing immediate civilization collapse. The relationship between the Thera eruption and Minoan decline remains disputed among scholars, with some arguing for direct causal connections through environmental damage and economic disruption, while others contend that the 2-century gap between eruption and palace destructions indicates separate and unrelated phenomena. Recent research has focused on identifying intermediate mechanisms through which volcanic effects could have contributed to long-term cultural changes, including climate impacts, agricultural disruption, and political instability that may have made Minoan society more vulnerable to later challenges. Environmental archaeology has provided new insights into the complex interactions between natural disasters, climate change, and cultural transformation that characterized the late Bronze Age Eastern Mediterranean. Analysis of pollen cores, marine sediments, and archaeological deposits has revealed patterns of environmental change that coincided with major cultural transitions throughout the region. These studies suggest that Minoan decline occurred within a broader context of regional instability that affected multiple civilizations simultaneously, indicating that local factors on Crete interacted with Mediterranean-wide phenomena to produce the observed cultural transformations. The legacy of Minoan civilization extends beyond its direct historical influence to encompass its role in modern understanding of European prehistory and the development of archaeological science. The discovery and study of Minoan culture demonstrated the complexity and sophistication of Bronze Age European societies, challenging evolutionary models that portrayed ancient history as a linear progression from primitive to advanced civilizations. The recognition that sophisticated urban societies had flourished in prehistoric Europe provided crucial evidence for understanding the deep historical roots of European cultural development. Contemporary applications of Minoan research extend into multiple fields, including urban planning, environmental management, and sustainable development, where ancient Minoan solutions to practical challenges provide insights relevant to modern problems. The sophisticated water management systems developed by Minoan engineers offer models for sustainable urban infrastructure, while their approaches to integrating human settlements with natural environments provide examples of environmentally sensitive development practices. The economic systems that enabled Minoan civilization to flourish for over a millennium demonstrate principles of resource management and international cooperation that remain relevant to contemporary global challenges. The continuing mystery of the undeciphered linear A script represents one of archaeology's greatest puzzles, with potential implications extending far beyond Minoan studies to encompass broader questions about language development, cultural transmission, and the relationship between writing systems and social organization. Advances in computational linguistics and digital analysis techniques offer new possibilities for decipherment efforts, while expanded archaeological excavations continue to provide additional Linear A texts that may eventually yield the breakthrough necessary for understanding this crucial aspect of Minoan culture. The preservation and presentation of Minoan archaeological sites face ongoing challenges that reflect broader issues in cultural heritage management and sustainable tourism development. The popularity of Minoan sites among international visitors creates opportunities for economic development and cultural education, while also generating pressures that threaten the long-term preservation of irreplaceable archaeological remains. Balancing public access with conservation requirements represents a continuing challenge that requires innovative approaches to site management and visitor education. The influence of Minoan civilization on contemporary culture extends beyond academic research to encompass artistic inspiration, literary creation, and popular imagination in ways that demonstrate the enduring appeal of this remarkable Bronze Age society. Modern artists, writers, and filmmakers continue to draw inspiration from Minoan themes, creating contemporary works that reinterpret ancient motifs for modern audiences while contributing to ongoing cultural dialogue about the relationship between past and present. The story of the Minoans, from their emergence as Europe's first advanced civilization through their transformation and ultimate absorption into the broader Greek cultural world, represents one of the most remarkable chapters in human history. Their achievements in art, architecture, technology, and social organization established foundations that would influence Mediterranean civilization for millennia, while their peaceful and sophisticated approach to urban life provided alternative models of social development that continue to inspire contemporary thinking about sustainable and equitable societies. Though their palaces fell and their script remains undeciphered, the legacy of the Sea Kings lives on in the cultural DNA of European civilization, a testament to human creativity, ingenuity, and the enduring power of cultural innovation to transcend the boundaries of time and circumstance.